Greetings, Lore Masters. Tonight our chronicle covers the creeping shadows of the Fourth Era, specifically the resurgence of an ancient order dedicated to hunting the monsters that stalk the night. We are delving deep into the frozen heart of Skyrim, where red eyes glow in the darkness and the sound of a crossbow bolt snapping into place becomes the only lullaby you can trust. It is a tale of blood, ancient prophecies, and the desperate struggle to keep the sun from being swallowed forever. Let's be honest, you probably wouldn't survive a trip to Cold Harbour without some serious enchanted gear, or at least a very fast pair of boots. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, drop a comment letting me know where in the world you are and what time it is. I always love seeing how far these stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. The story begins not with a roar, but with a whisper, or rather, a persistent rumour circulating among the city guards. You know the ones. They usually spend their shifts complaining about their cousins fighting dragons while they are stuck with guard duty, but lately their chatter has shifted. They speak of the Dawnguard, hunters of vampires. They say the old fort near Riften is being restored. It starts as ambient noise, just another layer of the world's texture until it becomes personal. Perhaps you're walking through the market in Whiterun, or stepping out of an inn in Solitude, when a burly orc named Durak approaches you. He doesn't care if you are the listener of the Night Mother or the Archmage of Winterhold. He only cares about your ability to fight. He hands you a flyer, his voice gruff, suggesting that if you want to do something that actually matters, you should seek out Isran. It is a call to arms that pulls the Dragonborn toward the southeastern edge of the map, to the autumnal forests of the Rift. The Rift is always deceptively beautiful, with its falling golden leaves and eternal twilight feel, but here, the shadows seem to stretch a little longer. Following the map marker, or perhaps just intuition, the path leads to a cleft in the rock face that most travellers would miss entirely. This is Dayspring Canyon. It is a narrow, winding pass that feels like a secret the Earth is trying to keep. As the Dragonborn steps through the cave entrance and into the canyon proper, the air changes. It is crisp, smelling of pine needles and damp stone. Here, we encounter a young Nord named Agmer. He is standing nervously by the path, clutching a farm axe that looks like it has seen more wood chopping than combat. Agmer is the perfect representation of the player's initial uncertainty. He admits he is terrified, worried that the Dawnguard won't take him, or worse, that he will be laughed out of the valley. He asks to walk with the Dragonborn, seeking safety in numbers. It's a quiet moment of camaraderie. As the two walk deeper into the canyon, the natural beauty is striking. Waterfalls cascade down the cliffsides, feeding a river that cuts through the centre of the valley. It is peaceful, a sharp contrast to the violence that is the Order's business. Then, the fort itself comes into view, Fort Dawnguard. It is a massive, imposing structure of grey stone built into the very mountain, straddling a roaring waterfall. It looks ancient because it is. One of the core in-game facts that players learn, often through scattered dialogue or exploring the premises, is that the fort was built in the Second Era. Long before the Septim Empire truly solidified its hold on Tamriel, it was originally constructed by the Jarl of Riften to house a mercenary force specifically hired to guard the Jarl's son. However, as is often the case in Skyrim, the history is darker than the stonework suggests. Fans and lore scholars often point out the irony in the Dawnguard's origins. The Jarl's son, whom the original Order was sworn to protect, had contracted vampirism. The Jarl, unable to kill his own child, hired the mercenaries to keep the boy contained, a secret jail guarded by the best. But isolation breeds madness. An obscure lore tidbit found in the in-game book, The Journal of Lord Leviticus, reveals that the original Dawnguard eventually succumbed to the vampire's influence. They were either turned or consumed, forcing the Jarl to seal the place shut. It remained a tomb for centuries, a monument to failure, until Isran cracked the seal. It's a bit like buying a haunted house because the market value is low, only to realise the ghosts come with the mortgage. As the Dragonborn and Agmer approach the main gate, they find Isran speaking with a vigilant of Stendar named Tolan. The dynamic here is immediately tense. Isran is a Redguard of immense stature and even more, immense cynicism. He wears heavy armour, a practical choice compared to the cloth robes the vigilants favour. He's berating Tolan, practically spitting the words out. We learn quickly that the Hall of the Vigilant, a place players might have visited in the vanilla game to cure diseases or read books, has been destroyed. The vampires didn't just attack it, they obliterated it. Everyone is dead. Tolan is one of the few survivors, and he is desperate for help. Isran, however, is not in the mood for "I told you so," even though he clearly enjoys saying it. He has been warning the Vigilants for years that their holy magic and robes weren't enough to stop a real vampire threat, and now that the threat is knocking on the door, he is vindicated, albeit bitterly. There is a prevalent fan theory in the community that Isran himself was once a Vigilant of Stendar, who left the Order in disgust due to their passivity and refusal to adapt. His knowledge of their internal workings and his specific disdain for their tactics suggests a personal history, a breakup that didn't end with, "let's just be friends." The interior of Fort Dawnguard is a cavernous, echoing space. It is very much a fixer-upper. There are cobwebs in the corners, crates of supplies scattered haphazardly, and the air is thick with the smell of dust and neglect. It's the kind of place that needs a montage sequence of people scrubbing floors, but for now, it serves as a grim command center. Isran turns his attention to the Dragonborn. He's skeptical, as he is of everyone, but he recognizes power when he sees it. He doesn't care about the Dragonborn's destiny to save the world from Alduin. He cares if you can kill a bloodsucker without getting bitten. To prove your worth, and to investigate the sudden spike in vampire activity, Isran issues the first real directive: investigate Dimhollow Crypt. Tolan, eager to avenge his fallen brothers, insists on going ahead to scout the location. Isran calls him a fool, but doesn't stop him. It's a grim foreshadowing that veteran players recognize immediately. The enthusiastic NPC rarely survives the first act. But before sending the Dragonborn out into the dark, Isran offers a gift: a crossbow. This is the signature weapon of the Dawnguard DLC, and acquiring it changes the rhythm of combat entirely. Unlike the fluid, silent draw of a hunting bow, the crossbow is mechanical, brutal, and loud. It ignores a significant portion of enemy armor and has a chance to stagger opponents. It feels less like an elegant weapon of a more civilized age and more like a handheld piece of siege artillery. Holding it for the first time, listening to the heavy thwack of the string and the click of the reload mechanism gives the player a sense of technological superiority. You aren't just hunting animals anymore, you're exterminating pests. Isran explains that the vampires are looking for something specific. Interrogations of captured thralls have pointed toward Dimhollow Crypt, a burial site that has been quiet for generations. If the vampires want it, the Dawnguard needs to get it first. It is a classic race against time setup. The player is given a few bolts, told to keep their eyes open, and sent back out into the world. Leaving the fort, the contrast between the safety of the canyon and the open world feels sharper. The sun is beginning to set, casting long shadows across the rift. The birch trees, usually so inviting, now look like skeletal fingers reaching for the sky. The ambient music shifts, the cellos digging into those lower, ominous registers. The Dragonborn must trek north, past the familiar sites of potential dragon attacks and wandering giants, toward the snowy peaks near the shrine of Mehrunes Dagon. The journey to Dimhollow Crypt is a transition from the political and logistical setup of the DLC into the horror action that defines it. As you climb the snowy slopes, the wind picks up, howling around the entrance to the crypt. There is a sense of foreboding here. The entrance isn't just a hole in the ground, it's a wound in the mountain. Blood spatters the snow outside, a clear indicator that the vampires have already arrived and they haven't been subtle about their entry. Stepping inside Dimhollow, the temperature seems to drop even further. This isn't a standard Nord barrow filled with Draugr sleeping off a hangover from the Merethic era. This place feels older, more purposeful. The architecture is sharp, jagged, and distinctly vampiric in nature, or at least corrupted by their presence. Almost immediately, the player encounters the bodies of vigilants, likely the ones who tried to follow Tolan or investigate on their own. They have been stripped of anything useful, their bodies left as grim warnings. The sound design in Dimhollow is masterful. You hear the distant, echoing voices of vampires conversing. They aren't mindless beasts. They are articulate, arrogant, and bored. They talk about their mission with a detachment that is chilling. They are looking for a woman, though they don't seem to know much more than that. The Dragonborn must utilize stealth or brute force to navigate these initial chambers, The vampires here are accompanied by deathhounds, creatures that look like dogs if dogs were made of nightmares and frozen meat. Their bites carry the frost of the grave, slowing the player down and sapping stamina. As the Dragonborn delves deeper, defeating the vampire sentries, they eventually find Vigilant Tolan. Or rather, they find what's left of him. He is dead, lying near the entrance to the main chamber. His bravery, or perhaps his recklessness, led him straight to his end. It confirms Isran's cynicism. Zealotry without preparation is just a fancy way to commit suicide. The path ahead opens up into a massive cylindrical cavern. This is the heart of Dimhollow Crypt. In the centre lies a circular island surrounded by water dominating the space. The architecture here is strange, unlike anything seen in Skyrim thus far. It is not Nord, not Dwemer, not even Falmer. It looks ceremonial. A vampire named Lokil is interrogating a captured vigilant named Adalvald on the central platform. The dialogue is tense. Lokil wants to know how to open the structure. Adalvald refuses, invoking the grace of Stendar right up until the moment he is silenced permanently. The Dragonborn must intervene here, descending the walkway to confront Lokil and his minions. It's a tough fight for the unprepared. Lokil is a powerful vampire, moving with supernatural speed, draining health with every spell. Once the dust settles and the silence returns to the cavern, the Dragonborn is left with the puzzle that killed the Vigilant. It is a large stone structure with braziers that can be moved along intricate tracks. It requires a bit of tactile manipulation, pushing the braziers until they ignite in purple flames, connecting the patterns on the floor. It's a mechanism that feels like locking a safe, or perhaps unlocking a prison. As the final brazier clicks into place, the floor begins to rumble. The stone monolith in the centre descends, revealing a hollow pillar that slowly rises. This is the moment the entire DLC pivots. Inside the pillar is not a weapon, nor a scroll, nor a pile of gold. It is a woman. She appears young, pale, with piercing eyes, and an elder scroll strapped to her back like it's a common backpack. This is Serana. She stumbles out, confused, asking about the date, the Empire, and the current High King. When the Dragonborn tells her it's the Fourth Era, her shock is palpable. She's been asleep for a very, very long time. The awakening of Serana is one of those moments in Skyrim where the game's atmosphere shifts from dungeon crawl to cinematic mystery. As she steps out of the monolith, stumbling slightly, the stone floor of Dimhollow Crypt feels colder than before. The purple braziers we just lit are casting long, dancing shadows against the walls, illuminating the confusion on her face. It's a beautifully rendered scene, the kind that makes you pause and actually look at the NPC instead of immediately looting the room. She isn't hostile. She isn't trying to drain the Dragonborn's blood, at least not yet. She's just disoriented. Imagine waking up from a nap that lasted, well, nobody's quite sure how long. You're stiff, you're thirsty, and the last thing you remember is a world that likely doesn't exist anymore. She clutches her chest, looking at the Dragonborn with eyes that are undeniably vampiric, glowing, piercing, orange-yellow pupils set against sclera that have seen too many centuries. But the most striking detail isn't her eyes, it's what is strapped to her back. It's an Elder Scroll. Now, for those of us who have spent hundreds of hours in Tamriel, seeing an Elder Scroll just casually strapped to someone's back like a hiking bedroll is a bit of a shock. These are artifacts of immense reality-bending power. They drive people mad just by looking at them. The Moth Priests spend their entire lives preparing to read a single line, often going blind in the process. And here is this young woman, treating it like carry-on luggage. It's a core in-game fact that the Elder Scrolls exist outside of time, describing past, present, and future simultaneously. But seeing one in the field, away from the majestic libraries or time wounds, really drives home the gravity of the situation. Whatever Isran sent us to find, we found something infinitely more dangerous. The conversation that follows is a masterclass in exposition through confusion. Serana asks about the current date, the High King, and the Empire. When the Dragonborn mentions the Empire, she looks genuinely puzzled. Empire? Of Cyrodiil, she asks, as if the concept of a unified Cyrodiil is a novelty. This dialogue has sparked one of the most enduring debates in the Elder Scrolls community. Fans still debate whether Serana was sealed away during the Interregnum, the chaotic period between the Second and Third Empires, or if she hails from as far back as the Merethic era or the First Era. Her shock that Cyrodiil is the seat of an empire suggests she predates the Septim dynasty entirely, and possibly even the Alessian Empire. It's a subtle way of telling the player, you're talking to living history. She's an anachronism, a relic of a time when the world was younger and bloodier, but there isn't much time for history lessons. The crypt is still active, and the awakening of a daughter of Coldharbour tends to ring a dinner bell for every dark creature in a 5-mile radius. As soon as the dialogue wheel closes and we agree to help her get home, because apparently the Dragonborn has a soft spot for ancient vampires with daddy issues, the room changes. The gargoyles perched on the high ledges, which up until now were just eerie decorations, crack and crumble. Stone gives way to grey flesh and green glowing eyes. This is the game's way of saying, okay, cutscene over, survive. Gargoyles are nasty pieces of work. They don't fight like the Draugr, who lumber toward you with telegraphed swings, or like bandits who shout insults before attacking. Gargoyles are silent, fast, and brutal. They absorb health with their claws, and their rocky hide acts as natural armour. If you're playing a stealth archer, and let's be honest, statistically you probably are, your arrows might just bounce off unless you're hitting critical spots. For the mage players, frost spells are particularly effective here, slowing them down before they can close the distance and tear into your robes. The path out of Dimhollow Crypt isn't the way we came in. We have to push forward, deeper into the cavern system to find a back exit. It's a classic dungeon design trope, but here it feels necessary. We're escaping with a prize and the dungeon is trying to keep us. As we fight our way through the next few chambers, Serana proves she isn't just a damsel in distress. She's a formidable mage. She raises the dead, usually the bandits or Draugr we just killed, to fight for us. It's a little unsettling the first time you see your recent kill stand up and groan, fighting its former allies, but in the dark, crowded tunnels of Dimhollow, you take whatever help you can get. We navigate through a massive amphitheatre-like room, filled with more Draugr and skeletons. It's a gauntlet. The level design here emphasises verticality. We are climbing, ascending out of the pit. Along the way, tucked into a curve of the cavern wall is a word. Wall, it's easy to miss if you're rushing to get Serana to safety, but it contains a word for the Drain Vitality shout. Here's a bit of obscure lore for you. This specific word wall is notorious not just for its power, but for being bugged in the original release of the DLC. It would often unlock a duplicate version of the Mark for Death shout or fail to register entirely, causing no end of headaches for completionists. It seems even the game code was confused by how old this place was supposed to be. The atmosphere in these tunnels is oppressive. The air is thick with the dust of the disturbed dead. The lighting is dim, relying on the glowing mushrooms and the occasional torch. Every shadow looks like it could be hiding another gargoyle. Serana comments on the state of the world as we move, her voice carrying a mix of curiosity and disdain. She notes the Draugr, calling them rotting Nords, and seems unimpressed by the state of Skyrim's subterranean real estate. Finally, we reach a large iron gate controlled by a lever, the universal sign that we are near the exit. Pulling the lever, the heavy gates grind open, revealing the snowy twilight of the outside world. Stepping out of Dimhollow Crypt feels like taking a breath after being held underwater. The wind is howling, snow is driving sideways, and the sky is that deep bruised purple of a Skyrim evening. We are on the northern slopes now, closer to the coast. The view is spectacular, overlooking the frozen wastes and the distant sea of ghosts. It's here that the reality of the situation settles in. We have a vampire, a pure-blooded ancient vampire carrying an Elder Scroll, and our orders from Isran were to kill vampires. Technically, we are failing our mission in the most spectacular way possible. But the Dragonborn is nothing if not a sucker for a side quest, and Serana has a destination in mind. She asks to be taken home, not to a crypt, but to an island castle off the coast of Solitude, Castle Volkihar. She mentions it with a tone that implies it's a place of majesty, though there is a hesitation in her voice, a tremor of uncertainty about what she will find there. She speaks of her father and how he will be pleased to see her. It's the first hint we get of the dysfunctional family dynamic that drives the entire Dawnguard narrative. This moment standing in the snow is a crucial pivot point. The game gives you a choice, ostensibly. You could take her to Fort Dawnguard. You could try to kill her right here. But the narrative pushes you gently but firmly toward the castle. It's the curiosity factor. Isran is just a guy in a fort. Serana is a mystery wrapped in an enigma carrying a scroll that can blind gods. The choice is illusory, but it feels significant. We agree to take her. The trek from Dimhollow to the coast is a long one if you don't have a convenient fast travel point unlocked. It involves navigating the rocky crags, avoiding the wandering giants who herd their mammoths in the snow, and dealing with the occasional ice wraith that shimmers almost invisibly against the white ground. During this journey, Serana's unique AI behaviour starts to shine. Unlike other followers who stand rigid and stare at you while you idle, Serana interacts with the world. If you stop at a crafting station, she might start using the tanning rack. If you sit at an inn, she sits too, maybe taking a drink or eating bread. It was a huge leap forward in NPC immersion at the time of release. She feels alive, ironic considering her condition. She comments on the weather. "I'm no stranger to the cold, but this is ridiculous," and complains about the sun when it rises. These small touches build a rapport. You aren't just escorting a quest item, you're travelling with a companion. As we descend toward the coastline, the water of the Sea of Ghosts comes into view, grey and churning. At the designated spot, a small jetty with a lone boat awaits. It's a simple rowboat, skeletal and worn, looking like it hasn't been used in years. Yet Serana looks at it as her chariot home. She warns us to keep our wits about us. "My father, he's not the most welcoming sort," she admits. That, as we're about to find out, is the understatement of the era. The boat ride is a fade-to-black moment, sparing us the mechanics of rowing across freezing water. When the screen fades back in, we are greeted by the silhouette of Castle Volkihar. It is a gothic nightmare rising from the sea. Spires twist into the mist, gargoyles perch on every cornice, and a bridge of bone and stone connects the main keep to the rocky islet we've landed on. It is magnificent and terrifying. Standing at the gates, we are about to cross a threshold from which there is no easy return. The gatekeeper, a vigilant watcher named Vingalmo, or perhaps just a thrall, initially challenges us, but upon seeing Serana, the tone shifts from aggression to reverent shock. "Lady Serana, can it be?" The massive iron gates, which have likely been sealed to outsiders for centuries, groan open. We are walking into the lion's den, or rather, the bat's cave. But unlike the feral caves we're used to, this one has court politics, fine dining, of a sort, and a hierarchy that makes the Falmer look like a chaotic book club. We're about to meet the court of Lord Harkon, and for the Dragonborn, whose blood is potent with the soul of a Dover, walking into a room full of starving ancient vampires is a bold strategy. The great iron doors of Castle Volkihar groan open with the weight of centuries, a sound that reverberates deep in the chest. Crossing the threshold is like stepping into a different dimension, one where the air is stale, smelling faintly of copper and expensive incense. We leave the howling wind of the Sea of Ghosts behind and enter the suffocating silence of the Volkihar court. The first thing that hits you isn't the darkness, it's the opulence. The main hall is vast, lit by roaring fireplaces that cast long, flickering shadows against the high stone walls. But this isn't the cosy warmth of a Whiterun inn. The firelight here feels predatory. Long tables are set for a feast, but the spread is unsettling. Upon closer inspection, the food consists of bloody cuts of meat that look suspiciously like they came from bipedal sources, and goblets filled with a thick red liquid that definitely isn't Alto wine. As the Dragonborn and Serana walk down the centre of the hall, the conversation dies. The vampires lounging at the tables stop mid-sip. They turn their heads in unison, their glowing eyes tracking every movement. It's the classic record scratch moment in a Western saloon, only everyone here is an immortal apex predator who views you as a juice box with legs. Core in-game facts remind us that the vampires of the Volkihar clan are not your standard cave-dwelling bloodsuckers. They are ancient, civilized, and incredibly political. They don't just hiss and attack, they sneer and judge. Among them, we can spot key figures like Vingalmo, an Altmer vampire who values magic and politics, and Orthiolf, a Nord who respects brute strength. They are the lieutenants of this court, and their rivalry is palpable even in their silence. They aren't just looking at the Dragonborn, they are looking at Serana, the prodigal daughter returning with an Elder Scroll on her back. At the far end of the hall, rising from a throne that looks uncomfortable enough to cause eternal back pain, is Lord Harkon. He is a terrifying presence. His face is gaunt, his skin pulled tight over sharp bones, and his armour is a masterpiece of dark craftsmanship. He descends the steps with a grace that defies his apparent age, ignoring the Dragonborn entirely to focus on Serana. The reunion is chilling. There are no hugs, no tears of joy. Harkon simply looks at her and asks about the Elder Scroll. Serana, clearly hurt but expecting this, confirms she has it. Harkon's reaction is one of cold calculation. He refers to her as Little Wolf, in a tone that sounds possessive rather than affectionate. It becomes immediately clear to the player that Serana isn't a daughter to him. She's a courier who finally delivered the package. The family dynamic here is toxic enough to poison a lesser dragon. Then Harkon turns his gaze to us, the Dragonborn, the mortal who walked into the lion's den. He acknowledges that we brought his daughter back, and for that he owes a debt. Harkon is a stickler for the old ways, for the transactional nature of power. He offers a reward, but not in gold or enchanted swords. He offers his blood. This is the pivotal moment of the entire expansion, the fork in the road that determines the next 20 hours of gameplay. Harkon begins his pitch. He speaks of the power of the Vampire Lord, a form that transcends the petty vampirism contracted from common scratches. He promises the ability to walk as a lion among sheep, to dominate the night, and to fear no mortal weapon. To demonstrate, he transforms right there in the hall. It's a grotesque display. His body contorts, bones cracking and reshaping. Enormous wings sprout from his back, his face elongates into a bat-like muzzle, and he hovers above the ground, draped in a cloak of shadows and red magic. It is horrifying and magnificent. He isn't just a vampire, he is a monster of legend. Here is where we find a piece of obscure lore that adds weight to this offer. The power Harkon is offering traces back directly to Molag Bal, the Daedric prince of domination. In the lore books, specifically Opusculus Lamebal, it is detailed that the first vampire, Lamebilfag, was created through a brutal and traumatic ritual by Molag Bal himself. The Daughters of Coldharbour, a term applied to female purebloods like Serana, and her mother Valerica, are implied to have undergone a similar horrific ritual to gain their status. Harkon, however, gained his power by sacrificing 1,000 innocents to the prince. His form is a badge of that atrocity. When he offers you his blood, he's offering you a direct link to the Lord of Brutality. It's not just a power-up, it's a spiritual corruption. The game pauses here, metaphorically holding its breath. The Dragonborn must choose, accept the gift and become a vampire lord, or refuse and remain a mortal hunter. Let's weigh the options. Accepting the gift aligns you with the Volkihar. You gain the Ain, Vampire Lord form immediately, which comes with its own perk tree, a new mechanic introduced in this DLC. You gain access to the castle as a home base, which includes blood potion vendors, thralls to feed on, the cattle kept in the basement, and a steady stream of quests to destabilize the holds of Skyrim. You become the monster. Refusing the gift, however, is where the tension spikes. It's the bold choice. You look this ancient monstrosity in the eye, while he is floating in his demon form no less, and say, no thanks. There is a significant community debate surrounding this moment, specifically regarding why Harkon lets the Dragonborn leave alive if they refuse. Fans often argue that it's a plot hole. Why would a ruthless vampire king let a known dragon slayer walk out the door to report back to Isran? The prevailing theory, often discussed in forums, is sheer arrogance. Harkon views mortals as so beneath him that killing the Dragonborn would be like a human, bothering to step on a specific ant. He simply doesn't perceive the player as a threat. He banishes you, teleporting you out of the castle with a wave of his hand, likely assuming the freezing water or the wilderness will finish the job. It's a classic villain mistake, underestimating the protagonist because they don't have glowing eyes. Another layer to this theory is Serana's presence. Even though Harkon is cold, killing the person who just saved his daughter right in front of her might cause immediate rebellion, and he needs her cooperation and her blood for the prophecy. So, he shows mercy as a calculated political move to keep Serana compliant, at least for now. If you choose the path of the hunter and refuse him, the screen fades to black and you wake up outside the castle gates on the gloomy docks. The gates are sealed tight, the bridge is raised, you are locked out. The only way forward is back to Fort Dawnguard. The trek back to Isran is a walk of shame, or Perhaps a walk of grim determination. The world feels different now. You've seen the face of the enemy, and it's not just a bandit chief in a cave. It's an organised, magical superpower with a fortress that rivals the Blue Palace. Returning to Fort Dawnguard after refusing Harkon changes the atmosphere of the DLC. When you walk through those canyon walls again, the fort feels less like a rundown ruin and more like the last bastion of humanity. Isran is waiting. When you tell him about the castle, the Vampire Lord, and the refusal, he doesn't pat you on the back. He gets to work. Isran's paranoia is vindicated. He immediately realises that the Dawnguard, in its current state, a couple of farmers with axes and a few recruits, is woefully unprepared for a war against the Volkihar clan. He orders the fortification of the stronghold. This triggers the recruitment drive phase of the quest line. But let's rewind for a moment to the alternative. If you do accept Harkon's gift, the experience is visceral. The screen pulses red. You hear the heartbeat of the castle itself. You black out and wake up in the vampire cattle pens or a dedicated shrine room feeling different. The sun, if it's up, burns your skin. Your eyes have changed. You're now part of the court. Harkon becomes your mentor, teaching you the basics of the Vampire Lord form. How to switch between melee claw attacks and blood magic. How to turn into a swarm of bats to dodge, and how to bite enemies to regain health. For the sake of our survival guide narrative, we have to assume the Dragonborn might be tempted by the power, but is ultimately wary of the cost. The sunlight weakness in Skyrim is no joke. Not regenerating health, magicka or stamina during the day can be crippling without heavy enchanting support. Plus, the aesthetic of being a vampire, pale skin, sunken eyes, might not fit everyone's roleplay fantasy of a heroic Nord warrior. Regardless of the choice, the die is cast. The ancient prophecy that Serana's scroll speaks of, the tyranny of the sun, is now the central conflict. Harkon wants to snuff out the sun to allow vampires to rule eternally. Isran wants to stop him, and you, the Dragonborn, are the pivot point upon which the fate of the sky turns. As we leave this section, whether you are now a creature of the night learning to fly, or a hunter sharpening your crossbow bolts with renewed fervour, the stakes have escalated. The skirmishes are over. The war has begun. The shadows in Skyrim are getting longer, and they are starting to bite back. If you chose the Dawnguard, Isran has a new task for you. He knows that raw strength won't be enough. He needs technology. He needs magic. He needs the old friends he alienated years ago. This leads us to the next leg of our journey, finding the people who can turn the tide. And if you chose the vampires, well, you still have work to do. Harkon tests you, Vengalmo and Orthioth plot against you, and you must prove that you aren't just a stray dog Harkon let in, but a predator worthy of the name. But for tonight's tale, let us assume we are preparing for the long haul. The castle is behind us, or around us, and the true mechanics of this war are about to unfold. We need better weapons. We need to understand what it means to be a vampire lord or a master hunter. Whether you accepted Harkon's bloody offer or fled the castle with your mortality intact, the shadow of the vampire lord now looms large over the narrative. For those who drank from the chalice, the transformation is immediate and visceral. It isn't a sparkle in the sunlight, it is a violent rewriting of biology. The screen blurs, the heartbeat thuds like a war drum in your ears, and your character, be they a burly orc or a delicate elf, is torn apart and reassembled into something ancient. Bones crack and lengthen, skin turns the colour of a bruised twilight sky, and massive membranous wings burst from your back. Let's be honest, the first time you transform, it's a power trip. You hover above the ground, mocking gravity, which by the way is a direct violation of the Imperial Levitation Act of 3E421, making you a criminal on multiple levels. You feel taller, broader, and infinitely more dangerous. The user interface changes, stripping away your familiar weapons and spells, replacing them with the raw chaotic magic of Molag Bal. The Vampire Lord form is a distinct mechanical beast. Unlike the standard werewolf transformation, which is all about unchecked aggression and sprinting, the Vampire Lord is a caster tank hybrid. You have two modes. On the ground, you're a flurry of claws tearing through enemies with a ferocity that restores your health. But the real fun, and let's admit it, the reason we pick this path, is the magic mode. You float, you cast. Your right hand hurls a red orb of drain life that explodes on impact, sucking the vitality from your foes to refill your own. Your left hand, it raises the dead. Not just one or two, but eventually an army. This brings us to the progression system, a core in-game fact that changed how we play Skyrim. The Vampire Lord has its own perk tree. It's not based on experience points or skill usage in the traditional sense. It's based on feeding. To advance, you must kill enemies with a drain life spell or a power attack bite. It's a literal feed-to-grow mechanic. The perk tree itself is visualized as a constellation of blood against a dark sky, a grim mirror to the warrior, mage, and thief constellations we're used to. At the base of this tree is Power of the Grave, granting bonus health, magicka, and stamina. From there, it branches out into terrifying abilities. You can unlock Mistform to become invulnerable and regenerate health, or supernatural reflexes to slow time to a crawl while you move at normal speed, a callback to the bullet time mechanics that make you feel like a supernatural speedster. But the crown jewel for many is Vampiric Grip. This telekinetic power allows you to lift enemies, bandits, guards, even giants if you're lucky, off the ground and choke the life out of them from a distance, or, more hilariously, fling them off the nearest cliff. Physics in Skyrim has always been a source of comedy, and Vampiric Grip turns the Dragonborn into a physics engine bully. There is a specific joy in grabbing a rude Whiterun guard who once mocked your sweet roll situation, and launching him into the Cloud District. However, embracing this form comes with a heavy aesthetic price. This touches on a massive community debate that has raged since the DLC launched, the ugly factor. Fans are deeply divided on the visual design of the Vampire Lord. Many players spend hours in the character creator sculpting the perfect Nord jawline or Dunmer war paint, only to have it replaced by a face that looks like a flattened bat crossed with angry gargoyle. The armour is fixed, a set of ancient royal vampire gear that you cannot change or upgrade. You can't wear your Daedric helmet, you can't show off your dragon scale prowess. You just look like Harkon. The debate often centres on why Bethesda didn't allow for more customization, or a more human appearance for the transformed state, similar to how modders have since fixed the issue. Some lore enthusiasts argue that the ugliness is the point. It's a curse, a corruption of the mortal form by a Daedric prince who despises beauty. You aren't supposed to look cool in a conventional sense, you're supposed to look like a nightmare. But let's talk about the drawbacks. Because surviving the Dawnguard DLC isn't just about dealing damage, it's about managing weaknesses. As a Vampire Lord, you are weak to fire. In a province known for its fire-breathing dragons and fire-wielding mages, this is a significant liability. A stray fireball spell that would normally just singe your eyebrows can now turn you into a pile of ash if you aren't careful. Then there is the sun. The Tyranny of the Sun isn't just a cool quest name, it's a gameplay mechanic. When outside during the day, your health, magicka, and stamina do not regenerate. At all. You're stunted, weaker, and the screen has a slight blur to it, simulating the disorientation of a nocturnal predator trapped in the light. You find yourself hugging the shadows, fast travelling only at night, and cursing the beautiful Skyrim mornings. It changes the rhythm of the game from a carefree adventure to a calculated schedule of darkness. There is also an obscure lore tidbit hidden in the game files and developer commentary regarding the wings of the Vampire Lord. Originally, the developers toyed with the idea of full flight, allowing the player to soar over mountains like a dragon. However, the game engine, specifically the way cells load on the console versions of 2011, couldn't handle a player moving that fast over the terrain without crashing or falling through the world. So, we got the hover mode instead. It's a compromise between godhood and technical limitations. You can sprint hover across water, which is fantastic for avoiding slaughterfish, but you'll still have to take the stairs like a peasant to get up a mountain. Socially, the cost is total isolation. When you are in Vampire Lord form, you are a monster to everyone. Guards will attack on sight, merchants will flee, your own horse might look at you funny, you cannot interact with objects, loot bodies, or fit through narrow doorways. That last one is a genuine tactical issue. The Vampire Lord model is bulky, with a wide wingspan. Trying to navigate the tight corridors of a Dwemer ruin or the cluttered basements of a bandit fort can be an exercise in frustration. You get stuck on doorframes, caught on protruding roots, and generally feel like a bull in a china shop. It's a rare moment where the game's geometry is a tougher boss than the actual enemies. Yet, despite the clumsiness and the fire weakness, the sheer utility of the form is undeniable. The bat's ability, a short-range teleport where you dissolve into a swarm of bats and reappear a few yards away, is the best dodge mechanic in the game. It allows you to phase through attacks, close gaps instantly or retreat, to cast more blood magic. Used correctly, a skilled player can take down an entire bandit camp without ever being touched. If you refused Harkon, you don't get access to this form immediately, though Serana might offer it to you later, a temptation that persists throughout the questline. Instead, you are fighting against it. You have to learn the telegraphed moves of the Vampire Lord to survive the boss fights. When you see Harkon or another Lord gather red energy, you know a drain spell is coming. When they dissolve into bats, you have to spin your camera to catch where they flank you. The lore behind the vampires of Skyrim also deepens here. We learn that there are different clans or bloodlines. The Volkihar are unique to Skyrim, known for their breath that freezes victims and their ability to move through ice, mechanically represented by the frost resistance and the ice-themed spell Serana uses. This contrasts with the vampires of Cyrodiil, who can walk in daylight if well-fed, or the Valenwood clans who, well, let's just say they are much stranger. The game emphasises that the Volkihar are the purest strain currently active, thanks to their direct pact with Molag Bal. Speaking of purity, the Blood of the Ancients quest, available if you side with the vampires, allows you to enhance your powers further by drinking from the Chalice of Helgarth. This artifact, filled with blood and vampire dust, grants your drain spell the ability to absorb stamina and magicka as well. It's a fetch quest that sends you to Redwater Den, a location that starts as a drug den for Redwater skooma, and reveals itself to be an ancient vampire facility. It's a brilliant bit of environmental storytelling, addicts lulled into a stupor to be used as cattle, a grim industrialization of feeding. Ultimately, mastering the Vampire Lord form is about accepting a different style of play. You're no longer the hero of the people, you are the thing they whisper about. You trade the warmth of the hearth for the cold dominance of the grave. You trade the ability to wear a helmet for the ability to eat people's souls. For those who chose the Dawnguard, seeing this power in action, usually being used against you, reinforces why Isran is so paranoid. A single Vampire Lord can decimate a town. A whole court of them? That's an extinction event. This realization drives the Dragonborn back to Fort Dawnguard with a sense of urgency. We can't just poke them with iron swords. We need an equalizer. We need something that hits harder than a spell and punches through supernatural armor. This leads us to the next phase of our survival guide. Isran, in his infinite grumpy wisdom, knows a woman. Her name is Serene Gerard, and she has a particular obsession with the Dwemer, the Deep Elves who vanished thousands of years ago but left behind the most advanced technology Tamriel has ever seen. Isran believes that if anyone can upgrade the Dawnguard's arsenal to match the Vampire Lord's power, it's her. But Serene isn't easy to find, and she's even harder to convince. She's out in the wilderness, likely arguing with a mudcrab about gear ratios, and she's not alone. Isran also wants us to find Gunmar, a master beast tamer who thinks he can train trolls to fight vampires. Yes, armoured trolls. Because if there's one thing better than a crossbow, it's a crossbow and a regenerating rage monster wrapped in steel. So shake off the bat wings or the fear of them. We're going tech hunting. The ancient magic of the vampires is strong, but the lost science of the Dwemer is about to give us a fighting chance. It's time to trade blood magic for gunpowder, or at least the Skyrim equivalent, exploding dwarven bolts. With the horrors of the Vampire Lord fresh in our minds, either as a newfound power coursing through our veins or a nightmare we barely escaped, the narrative shifts gears. If you sided with the vampires, you are currently exploring the political intrigue of Castle Volkihar, likely being sent on radiant quests to discredit the Dawnguard or turnkey citizens. But for the sake of survival, and because the Dawnguard path offers some of the most unique loot in the game, let's focus on Isran's counter-strategy. He knows that faith and steel aren't enough. He needs superior firepower. Isran sends us to find two old associates he alienated years ago, Serene Gerard and Gunmar. This is the getting the band back together montage of the DLC. First, we track down Serene Gerard. She's usually found wandering near the riverbanks of the Reach, often frantically searching for a lost satchel of Dwemer gyros. Serene is a Breton, which makes sense given their natural affinity for magic and Resistance, but her passion lies in engineering. She's the closest thing Skyrim has to a mad scientist. When we find her, she's convinced a mudcrab stole her schematics. It's a moment of levity in a grim story. You have to either find her missing bag or pass a speech check to convince her that the vampire threat is more important than a gyro. Once recruited, Serene transforms Fort Dawnguard. She sets up shop in the main hall and begins demanding schematics. This triggers a series of ancient technology Radiant quests that are absolute goldmines for archers. You're sent to Radiant dungeon locations, often bandit camps or Dwemer ruins, to retrieve specific blueprints. The rewards are game-changing. Serene teaches you how to craft the enhanced crossbow and the dwarven crossbow. The latter is a heavy golden beast of a weapon that ignores 50% of enemy armour, but the real game-changer is the ammunition. Serene unlocks the ability to craft exploding bolts, fire, ice, and shock. Let's talk about the in-game fact here. Exploding bolts are not just visual flair, they are tactical nukes for the early to mid-game. A firebolt doesn't just do damage, it explodes in a small radius, setting targets on fire. This is devastating against vampires who, as we know, are weak to flame. Shock bolts deal damage to magicka, crippling enemy casters. Ice bolts slow charging enemies. The sound design for these is satisfyingly punchy, a thwack boom that echoes through the dungeon. There is a piece of obscure lore hidden in the item descriptions and concept art regarding these weapons. The Dwemer, the deep elves who vanished, were known for their tonal architecture and steam power, but their projectile weaponry was rarely seen outside of the Sphere Centurions. Serene's work implies she is reverse engineering personal arms that the Dwemer might have used for infantry, or perhaps she is miniaturizing siege weapon tech. It suggests that the Dwemer had an entire class of handheld firearms or advanced crossbows that were lost to time, and Serene is the first person in millennia to figure out how the trigger mechanisms worked. It parallels the real-world history of rediscovering lost technologies, like Greek fire or Damascus steel. While Serene handles the ranged warfare, Gunmar handles the melee. We find him in the Rift, usually hunting a bear that has been tainted by Spriggans or just being a nuisance. Gunmar is a burly Nord, a beastmaster who believes that nature can be turned against the unnatural. Once he joins the Dawnguard, he opens up the armoured troll service. Yes, you heard that right. Armoured trolls. For 500 gold, you can hire a troll strapped in heavy leather and steel plating to follow you around. These aren't the frost trolls that terrorised you on the way to High Hrothgar. These are trained, battle-hardened units. They are absolute tanks. They soak up damage, regenerate health rapidly, as trolls do, and stagger enemies with their massive swings. Having an armoured troll in Serana, if she's with you, creates a formidable squad. However, the inclusion of armoured trolls sparks a significant community debate regarding the morality and lore-friendliness of the Dawnguard. The Dawnguard presents itself as a noble order, but Isran's methods are extreme. Trolls in Skyrim are generally depicted as semi-sentient, primitive creatures. Enslaving them, strapping armour onto them, and sending them to die against vampires raises ethical questions that the game glosses over but players often discuss. Are we better than the vampires if we treat living creatures as disposable weapons? Isran would say yes, because the alternative is extinction. Gunmar seems to treat them with a rough respect, but they are still tools to him. Mechanically, the trolls have a downside. They are loud. If you are a stealth character, an armoured troll is a liability. They roar, they stomp, and they engage enemies you might have wanted to bypass. But for a loud and proud warrior build, they are perfect. With Serene and Gunmar installed, Fort Dawnguard becomes a bustling hub. The Hammer of the Forge rings out constantly. There is a new vendor for spells, Florentius Banius, whom we recruit later, but fits this expansion phase. The fort feels alive. It's no longer a tomb, it's a war room. Serene also offers another critical upgrade, the Rune Hammer, Rune Shield, and Rune Axe. These are unique Dawnguard artifacts. The Rune Axe is particularly interesting for lore hunters. It tracks the number of undead you've killed since the last sunrise, powering up its sun damage enchantment. It resets every morning. This mechanic ties directly into the solar cycle, reinforcing the DLC's central theme of the sun versus the dark. It's a weapon that encourages you to go on a rampage every single day to maximize its potential. While we are arming up, it's worth noting the crossbow versus bow debate that this section reignites among Fans. The crossbow has a higher base damage and a faster projectile speed, flatter arc, making it easier to aim at long range. However, the reload time is static. You cannot speed it up with perks like Quick Shot, in the same way you can a regular bow. This leaves you vulnerable for a second or two after every shot. It creates a rhythm of shoot, take cover, reload, peek, shoot. It feels more like a cover shooter mechanic than the fluid strafing of a bow user. Many players find themselves switching back to bows for the speed, but keeping a crossbow for that opening armour-piercing shot. The aesthetic of the Dawnguard armour also deserves a mention here. It is functional, heavy, and lined with fur, perfect for Skyrim's climate. It contrasts sharply with the sleek, almost alien design of the Vampire Royal armour. The Dawnguard look like they belong in the world. The vampires look like they are trying to conquer it from above. As we stockpile exploding bolts and get used to the smell of wet troll fur, the reality of our situation sets in. We have the weapons, we have the muscle, we even have the girl. Serana is usually hanging around the fort if you're on the Dawnguard side, often leaning against a pillar and complaining about the weather. But we still don't know what the enemy's actually planning. We know it involves the Elder Scroll, and we know it involves the tyranny of the sun. Serana has the scroll, but she can't read it. The Dragonborn can't read it without going blind or insane. We need a specialist. We need a Moth Priest. Moth Priests are the only mortals capable of deciphering the Elder Scrolls. They are an Imperial order usually found in the White Gold Tower in Cyrodiil. Finding one in Skyrim is like finding a needle in a haystack, except the needle is blind and surrounded by moths. Isran, ever the pragmatist, tasks us with finding out if there are any Moth Priests in Skyrim. As luck would have it, rumours point to a scholar visiting, Dragonbridge. It seems the Empire is interested in the scrolls too. This transition marks the end of the arming up phase and the beginning of the investigation phase. We are leaving the comfort of our new fortress and heading back out to the roads. The excitement of the new toys, the crossbows, the trolls, fades slightly as we realise that brute force can't solve a riddle written in the fabric of time. So check your quiver. Make sure you have enough firebolts. Tell your troll to wait by the door. Seriously, they block the hallways. We are going to Dragonbridge to find a man who reads the future by sacrificing his sight. With our arsenal upgraded, whether with explosive bolts or ancient vampiric perks, we return to the core problem. We have an Elder Scroll and nobody to read it. It is the ultimate cosmic irony. We hold the history of the universe in our hands, but it's encrypted in a language that melts the eyes of anyone foolish enough to squint at it. The urgency at Fort Dawnguard, or Castle Volkihar, shifts from arm everyone to find a translator. Isran or Harkon, depending on your allegiance, points us toward Dragonbridge. Rumours have been circulating of an Imperial scholar passing through, a man with the distinctive grey robes and white blindfold of the cult of the ancestor Moth, the Moth Priests. These are the monks of the Imperial city who have dedicated their lives to the deciphering of the scrolls. When we arrive at Dragonbridge, the scene is already cold. The guards are confused, the locals are spooked. We find a wrecked carriage just south of the bridge. It's a mess of splintered wood, dead soldiers, and a vampire corpse or two. A note on one of the bodies confirms our fears. The vampires got to him first. They've taken him to Forebear's Holdout, a small radiant dungeon location that is easy to miss if you aren't looking for the blood trail. Inside the holdout we find Dexion Evicus, but he isn't in a cell. He is trapped inside a magical barrier, clearly enthralled. If you're with the Dawnguard, you have to fight through a layer of vampires, including a particularly nasty boss named Malchus, who holds the waystone focus needed to drop the barrier. If you're with the vampires, the dynamic is slightly different. You are rescuing him from his captors to bring him to a better master, but the result is the same. Dexion is confused, hostile, and essentially mind-controlled. You have to beat him into submission. Once his health drops, he yields, the enthrallment breaks, or is overridden by your own vampire seduction, and he agrees to head to your base. Back at the headquarters, the atmosphere is electric. This is the moment we've been waiting for. Dexion, pompous but useful, unfurls the Elder Scroll. The lighting in the room dims. The scroll glows with that impossible star-filled texture. He begins to read. Here is a core in-game fact that players often overlook in the heat of the moment. Reading an Elder Scroll is physically damaging. Dexion cries out, his voice straining as he translates the visual noise into prophecy. He speaks of the tyranny of the sun and Auriel's bow. But then he collapses. He clutches his eyes. He is done. He has deciphered a fragment, but the cost was his sight. He is now blind, useless for any further reading. He tells us that the prophecy is split among 3 scrolls: the Scroll of Sun, which we have, the Scroll of Blood, and the Scroll of Dragon. He cannot read anymore, but he knows a way we can. This leads us to one of the most visually stunning and atmospheric locations in the entire game, the Ancestor Glade. Dexion explains that there is an ancient ritual, one that allows even the uninitiated to glean knowledge from the scrolls without immediately frying their brains. It involves the canticle trees and the ancestor moths. We must travel to the glade, located high in the Gerald Mountains near Falkreath. The entrance is humble, but the interior is a breathtaking pocket of tropical flora hidden within the frozen north. It is a cavern where the ceiling has collapsed, letting in shafts of natural light that illuminate lush grass, flowing streams, and pink-blossomed trees that seem out of place in Skyrim. The sound design here is incredible. A soft, pervasive humming of wings and wind. It feels holy. Here we engage in the mesmerizing ritual the outline promised. First, we must retrieve the draw knife, a unique ceremonial weapon used to harvest the bark of the canticle trees. The mechanic is simple, but evocative. You scrape the bark, and the sound attracts the ancestor moths. They don't just land on you, they swarm you. As you move from tree to tree, collecting the swarms, the screen begins to glow. The buzzing gets louder. You're being cloaked in a living armor of moths. It is a moment of pure, magical realism. These insects, which are said to carry the spirits of the ancient Nords, are connecting your mind to the song of the universe. In the book Pension of the Ancestor Moth, it is explained that the moths are attracted to the song of the bark, which resonates with the tonal architecture of the Elder Scrolls. The moth priests essentially cultivate these moths to act as a biological buffer, filtering the raw information of the scrolls into something a mortal mind can process, usually through the moth's song. By covering yourself in them, you are essentially turning your body into a giant antenna for cosmic data. With the moth swirling around you, you step into the shaft of light in the centre of the glade and unfurl the scrolls. The interface explodes into a star map, the symbols align. The prophecy speaks to you directly, bypassing the need for eyes. You see the location of Auriel's bow. You see the dark secret of the Scroll of Blood. However, a fan theory persists about this ritual. Many players wonder why the Dragonborn doesn't go blind like Dexion. Is it the moths? Or is it because the Dragonborn is a Dover, a shard of Akatosh, the dragon god of time, and thus has a natural resistance to the time-bending effects of the scrolls? The game never explicitly says you survive because you are Dragonborn, but the implication is there. We are built differently. Dexion was a scholar. We are a demigod. The ritual reveals a terrifying truth. To complete the prophecy, or to stop it, we need the other scrolls. The reading in the glade points us specifically to the location of the Scroll of Blood. It is not in a dungeon, it is not in a library. It is in a place where the sun never shines, a plane of oblivion where lost souls are currency. We learn that Serana's mother, Valerica, fled with the Scroll of Blood ages ago. She didn't just hide, she left the world entirely. She went to the Soul Cairn. The realization hits hard. We have deciphered the where, but the how is a nightmare. The Soul Cairn is not a place you just walk into. It is a realm of the ideal masters, necromantic entities who hoard souls like precious stones. Dexion, now nursing his ruined eyes back at the fort, warns us that entering such a place is usually a one-way trip for mortals. But Serana has a theory. She believes there is a portal in her father's castle, a secret laboratory that Valerica used. This sets the stage for our next great heist. We have the knowledge of the Ancestor Glade, the humming of the moth still fresh in our ears, but now we must trade the beauty of the canticle trees for the desolate purple wastes of the undead. The section closes as we leave the glade, the moths dispersing back into the trees. The peaceful humming fades, replaced by the grim resolve of a hunter. We know where the scroll is, we know who has it, and we know that to get it, we're going to have to make a deal with death itself. The path to the Soul Cairn does not begin with a map marker or a quest update. It begins with a return to the Lion's Den. Whether you're a vampire lord ruling the night, or a Dawnguard hunter infiltrating enemy lines, the road leads back to Castle Volkihar. But we aren't kicking down the front door this time. We are slipping through the cracks of history, specifically toward the ruined courtyard in the back of the castle, a place forgotten even by the immortals who live there. The courtyard is a melancholic space, overgrown with moon-pale vegetation and littered with the debris of a family that stopped caring centuries ago. Here, the Dragonborn and Serana encounter one of those classic Skyrim puzzles that make you pause and wonder about the practicality of magical security systems. It involves a moon dial, a large, celestial clock face set into the ground. It is missing its crests, battered by time and sea salt. Finding the missing pieces scattered around the garden feels like a grim Easter egg hunt. As the final crest clicks into place, the gears of the castle groan, shifting stone against stone to reveal a spiral staircase descending into the dark. This leads to the ruins of the castle's old tower, Valerica's study. It is a dusty, cobweb-choked laboratory that smells of dried herbs and ancient desperation. This is where Serana's mother worked in secret, researching the very thing we are about to face. In the centre of the room stands a portal structure, dormant and cold. To open it, we need a specific cocktail of ingredients: finely ground bone meal, soul gem shards, and purified void salts. It sounds like the shopping list for a necromancer's tea party. Once the ingredients are placed in the vessel, Serana adds the final catalyst: her own blood. As a daughter of Cold Harbour, her vitae is potent enough to bridge dimensions. The liquid swirls, hisses, and then the portal ignites. It doesn't glow with the warm orange of fire or the cool blue of magicka. It burns with a sickly bruised purple. It looks like a wound in reality. Before we can step through, however, Serana stops us. Her voice is grave, her usual sarcasm replaced by genuine concern. She explains a fundamental rule of metaphysics in the Elder Scrolls universe. The Soul Cairn is a hungry place. It consumes life. A mortal cannot simply walk into a plane designed to house the dead. The portal will drain the life from your body before your boots even touch the other side. This presents the Dragonborn with the heavy price of admission mentioned in our itinerary. It is a binary choice, and both options carry significant weight for role-playing and gameplay mechanics. The first option is to let Serana turn you into a vampire lord right there in the lab. If you refused Harkon's gift earlier, this is the game giving you a second chance to join the dark side. Becoming undead cloaks you from the Cairn's hunger. You enter as a peer, not prey. For many players who regretted their initial refusal or simply want the achievement, this is the moment they succumb. The second option is for the stubborn, the righteous, or the paladin role players who would rather die than drink blood. You can choose to be partially soul-trapped. Serana offers to capture a fragment of your soul in a gem. This tricks the ideal masters, the rulers of the Cairn, into thinking you are already dead, allowing you safe passage. However, this comes with a nasty status effect called Weakened Soul. Here is an in-game fact that catches many unprepared adventurers off guard. The Weakened Soul debuff reduces your health, magicka and stamina by 45 points. In the late game, this might be negligible, but if you're tackling the Dawnguard DLC at the recommended level of 10 or 20, losing nearly 50 points of your vital stats is a crippling blow. It effectively de-levels you, making you fragile in a realm full of high-level skeletons. Your magicka regeneration is also stunted. You feel physically lighter, hollowed out. The game visualizes this with a subtle draining sound effect and a pale cast to your character's skin. You are literally less of a person. With the price paid, either in blood or spirit, we step into the portal. The transition is jarring. The loading screen fades, and we are standing on cracked, barren earth. The sky above is a swirling vortex of violet clouds and lightning, devoid of any sun or stars. Gravity feels heavier here. The air is filled with a low static hum that never goes away. We have entered the Soul Cairn. This is a pocket plane of oblivion, distinct from the fiery deadlands of Dagon or the frozen wastes of Cold Harbour. It is a purgatory of endless grey dust and jagged black architecture. The landscape is dotted with soul husks, strange fungal growths that look like shriveled faces screaming in silent agony. Consuming them provides a small resistance to magic, but the act of eating something that looks like a dried soul feels inherently wrong. As we navigate this desolate plain, we encounter the primary inhabitants, the Bonemen, Mistmen, and Wrathmen. These aren't your standard Skyrim skeletons. They are black-boned, wreathed in purple flame, and hit like trucks. The Wrathmen in particular wield two-handed dragonbone weapons that can one-shot a player suffering from the weakened soul debuff. But the true masters of this realm are not the skeletons. They are the Ideal Masters. The Ideal Masters are enigmatic entities that rule the Soul Cairn. Unlike the Daedric princes who have distinct personalities and forms, like Molag Bal's domination or Sheogorath's madness, the Ideal Masters are abstract. They appear in the game only as giant, floating magenta crystals that drain the life of anyone who gets too close. Lore books from Battlespire, an older Elder Scrolls game, suggest that the Ideal Masters were once mortal necromancers from the Merethic era who achieved a form of transcendence. They shed their physical bodies to become beings of pure magical consciousness. They don't want worship, they want commerce. They trade power to necromancers in exchange for souls. Every time a necromancer in Tamriel uses a black soul gem, the soul inside is sent here, to the Cairn, as payment. There is a prevalent community debate surrounding the morality of soul trapping because of this place. Before the Dawnguard DLC, players would casually soul trap bandits, rabbits, and Nazim to enchant their daggers without a second thought. Visiting the Soul Cairn recontextualizes that mechanic entirely. You see the souls of confused farmers, angry soldiers, and weeping mothers wandering the wastes trapped for eternity because some mage needed a slightly better enchant on their boots. It sparked a massive debate on forums. Is the Dragonborn the true villain for using Soul Trap? By enchanting your gear, are you condemning thousands of souls to this purple hellscape to feed the Ideal Masters? The game doesn't force you to reckon with this, but the environment does. Navigating the Soul Cairn is a unique challenge. There is no local map. Attempting to open your map menu just shows the general world map of Skyrim, completely useless in this dimension. This was a deliberate design choice by Bethesda to induce a sense of lostness and claustrophobia, but it is also a source of immense frustration for completionists. You have to rely on visual landmarks, massive floating towers that pulse with lightning. One of the most striking features of the cairn is the lightning rods. These tall metallic conductors attract the violet lightning from the sky. If you place a grand or greater soul gem in the receptacle at the base, the lightning strikes it, corrupting the gem and turning it into a black soul gem. This is the only renewable source of black soul gems in the game, a mechanic that rewards those who linger in this hell. It's a subtle nod to the industrial nature of the cairn. It is a factory for processing spiritual energy. As we trudge through the ash, fighting off waves of bonemen, we start to see the remnants of other lives. There are spectral cows, likely trapped by mistake. There is a ghost named Jube. Yes, that Jube, the first face you saw in Morrowind, who is now wandering the cairn writing his memoirs. Finding the pages of his book is a side quest that tests your patience, forcing you to scour every inch of this mapless wasteland. But our goal is Valerica. We are looking for a prison within a prison. The architecture gets denser as we move deeper. We see massive walls made of black masonry that looks like it was cut from the void itself. The sense of scale here is oppressive. The towers loom over you, and the constant rumble of thunder acts as a psychological weight. If you chose the weakened soul path, you might notice a special objective marker appear, a gem containing your soul essence. It is usually guarded by a particularly nasty group of undead. Retrieving it is optional, but highly recommended. Touching the gem restores your vitality, removing the debuff and letting you breathe easy again, or as easy as one can breathe in a vacuum. Finally, in the centre of the cairn, protected by a barrier of energy that puts the College of Winterhold's wards to shame, lies the Boneyard. This is where Valerica has been hiding for thousands of years, but she isn't alone. The barrier is maintained by 3 colossal towers, each guarded by a keeper. These keepers are the elite jailers of the Ideal Masters, towering figures in heavy dragonbone armour. We can see Valerica through the shimmer of the barrier. She looks like an older, harder version of Serana. She paces, clearly agitated. She has survived here by striking a stalemate with the Masters, but she is trapped just as surely as the souls wandering the wastes. Reaching her requires us to dismantle the security system of the Ideal Masters. We have to hunt down the Keepers, and that means exploring the corners of this dimension where even the ghosts fear to tread. The lightning crackles overhead, illuminating the skeletal dragon circling the boneyard, a silhouette that looks disturbingly familiar. The Soul Cairn is the endurance test. It wears you down with its monochromatic palette and its relentless enemies. It asks you how far you're willing to go for a prophecy you barely understand. And as you stand before the first of the massive keeper towers, weapon drawn, you realise that the price of admission was just the beginning. The real cost is fighting your way back out. Standing before the shimmering barrier that imprisons Valerica, the scale of the Soul Cairn truly begins to weigh on you. It isn't just the oppressive purple sky or the constant distant rumble of thunder, it's the sheer architectural malice of the place. Valerica, Serana's mother, is safe inside her cage, or rather, she's preserved like a fly in amber. She explains that the barrier is sustained by the life force of 3 boneyard keepers, immense servants of the ideal masters who act as living batteries for the prison. To free her, and to get the Elder Scroll, we have to go out there and kill them. This triggers the hunt phase of the quest line, and let's be honest, it is also where the Soul Cairn tests your patience the most. You see, the Soul Cairn has a distinct lack of navigational aids. There are no road signs, no friendly guards to give directions, and most critically, no local map. Opening your menu just shows the vast empty expanse of Skyrim, which is about as helpful as a chocolate teapot in this dimension. This design choice has sparked a decade-long fan theory and community debate. Is the lack of a map a brilliant diegetic way to simulate the hopelessness of being a lost soul in purgatory, or is it just frustrating level design? Many players argue that getting lost is the point. You are supposed to feel the panic of the souls trapped here. You wander aimlessly, circling the same jagged black rocks, fighting the same skeletons, until time loses its meaning. Others, usually the ones trying to find all 10 pages of St. Giob's opus for his locket, argue that it's just a headache. Regardless of where you stand on the art versus annoyance spectrum, the reality is that you're now playing a game of hot and cold, with 3 giant towers in a monochrome wasteland. The keepers are located at the towering spires visible in the distance. These structures act as lightning rods for the realm's dark energy. As you approach the first tower, usually the one to the west, the environment fights back. The lightning strikes become more frequent, not just as ambience but as hazards. If you aren't careful, a bolt of violet energy will slam into the ground next to you, staggering your character and taking a chunk of health. It's the ideal masters taking potshots at the intruder. The first keeper is typically the melee variant. He stands atop his tower, a hulking silhouette against the bruised sky. When you climb the ramparts to face him, you realise why Valerica hasn't tried to break out herself. Here is an in-game fact that changes the economy of your playthrough. The keepers wield dragonbone weapons. Before the Dawnguard DLC, dragonbone weapons were a myth, accessible only to master smiths who had ground their skill to level 100. But here, in the Soul Cairn, you can loot them off the corpses of these bosses. Killing this keeper might drop a dragonbone mace or greatsword. It's a massive power spike for mid-level players. Suddenly you are swinging a weapon made from the remains of a Dover, dealing raw physical damage that outclasses almost anything else in your inventory. The fight itself is brutal. The keeper is relentless. He doesn't shout or taunt. He just swings with the weight of eternity behind every blow. He's heavily armoured in a unique ancient variant of dragonplate armour that, sadly, you cannot loot. A tragedy that fashion-conscious players mourn to this day. He summons bonemen to harass you, forcing you to manage crowd control while dodging crushing overhead strikes. Once the first keeper falls, a beam of light shooting into the sky from his tower dissipates. The barrier weakens. 1 down, 2 to go. The journey to the second tower takes you through the drain zones. Scattered throughout the cairn are massive floating crystals. They hover above small shrines, humming with a low throbbing sound that you feel in your teeth. These are the direct conduits of the ideal masters. While the ideal masters are formless entities of pure consciousness, these crystals are how they feed. If you step too close to one, a visual effect triggers. Your health bar turns red and starts rapidly draining. This isn't just damage, it is absorption. The lore implies that the crystals are literally sipping your soul like a drink through a straw. In Battlespire, it was established that the ideal masters crave spiritual currency, and these crystals are the collection points. They're essentially toll booths for the soul trade. You have to consume soul husks, those gross fungal skins we found earlier, to grant yourself a temporary resistance to this draining effect. It's a grim mechanic, eating the byproduct of a dead soul to stop your own soul from being eaten. Navigating around these soul siphons, we reach the second keeper. This one is usually an archer. He spots you from miles away. The flat, open terrain of the Soul Cairn offers very little cover, so you find yourself doing the serpentine run as dragonbone arrows whiz past your head. These arrows hit hard. A single shot can take out a mage's oak flesh barrier and half their health bar. Fighting the archer keeper is a game of closing the distance. If you are a melee character, you have to sprint through the arrow storm, dodging bonemen who rise from the dust to grab your ankles. If you are a stealth archer yourself, this becomes a sniper duel in the dark, the satisfying thwack of your crossbow bolt, hopefully an exploding one you crafted with Serene. Finally silencing him is a moment of pure relief. The third and final keeper is a mage. He guards his tower with a host of wrathmen. These are the elite summons of the cairn, wielding two-handed weapons and moving with a terrifying speed. The mage keeper casts powerful destruction magic, usually shock-based, which drains your magicka. This is particularly punishing for spellzord builds who rely on mana for both offense and healing. The fight is chaotic. Lightning rains from the sky, the keeper flings thunderbolts, and the wrathmen swing their axes. It's a sensory overload of purple light and crashing sound. But when the final keeper falls, crumbling into a pile of black ash and dragonbone, the atmosphere shifts. The oppressive hum of the barrier back at the boneyard ceases. The path to Valerica is open, but we aren't done with the cairn's horrors yet. As we trek back to the centre, looting the fresh dragonbone weapons from our kills, we might stumble upon a hidden area if we are thorough and lucky. There is a building called the Reaper's Lair. If you have been collecting Reaper gem fragments from the chests under the floating crystals, a task that requires tanking the soul drain damage, you can summon a secret boss, the Reaper. The Reaper is a hooded, scythe-wielding figure that vomits slime and hits like a truck. He's a nod to the classic Grim Reaper archetype, but twisted by the Elder Scrolls aesthetic. Defeating him yields... well, actually, the loot is often disappointing, usually just some Daedra hearts and black soul gems. It's another point of contention in the community. The build-up to the Reaper suggests an epic encounter, but the reward feels like an afterthought. It reinforces the theme of the Soul Cairn. Lots of effort for a bleak, hollow payout. Returning to Valerica, the barrier is gone. She's impressed. Though she hides it well under layers of cynicism, she invites us into the boneyard proper to retrieve the scroll, but she warns us that the Ideal Masters will not let their prize go without one final objection. They don't fight us directly, that's beneath them. Instead, they send their pet. As we walk into the boneyard, a massive open arena surrounded by ancient sarcophagi, the ground shakes. A shadow passes overhead, darker than the purple sky. A dragon roars, but this isn't a normal roar. It sounds wet, guttural and layered, with the echo of the grave. This is Durnehviir, the cursed dragon. He crashes down onto one of the spires, looking like a rotting corpse of a dragon. His scales are peeling, his wings are tattered, and he is dripping with the slime of the cairn. He is undead, bound to this plane for eternity. Valerica shouts for us to kill him. He is bound to the Ideal Masters. He cannot disobey. The boss fight with Durnehviir is unique. He summons bonemen and mistmen to fight alongside him, turning the arena into a mosh pit of undead. He uses a unique shout called Soul Tear, which rips the soul directly out of your body, dealing massive damage and reanimating any corpse it hits as his ally. If you are hit by it, your screen flashes purple and your stats plummet. It's a nasty, panic-inducing mechanic. We have to juggle fighting the minions and dealing damage to the dragon. Dragonrend is your best friend here, forcing him to land so you can hack away at his rotting hide. Serene's exploding. Firebolts are also incredibly effective, lighting up his decaying form and dealing extra damage to his undead physiology. When Durnehviir's health bar finally depletes, he doesn't dissolve into a skeleton and yield a dragon soul like normal dragons. Instead, he bursts into violet flame and reforms, fading away. He is defeated but not destroyed. In the Soul Cairn, death is just a temporary inconvenience. Valerica leads us to the Elder Scroll. It sits in a case, radiating that familiar, maddening energy. We take it. The Scroll of Blood is finally ours. But as we turn to leave, Valerica stops. She isn't coming with us. She explains that if she leaves, the Ideal Masters will just hunt her down again, and she's safer here in her prison than out there where Harkon can reach her. It's a tragic, self-imposed exile. She urges us to take Serana and finish what she started. As we exit the boneyard, heading back toward the portal to Skyrim, Durnehviir reappears. He lands on a rock, outcropping, not to fight, but to talk. This is one of the most memorable interactions in the DLC. Durnehviir's voice is rasping and ancient. He explains that he was once a dragon of the skies who sought necromancy to gain power over his rivals. The Ideal Masters tricked him, binding him to the Soul Cairn in exchange for power. He can never leave for long, or his body will crumble to dust. He respects your strength. He calls you Cunarin, Vanquisher. He asks a favour. He teaches you his shout, Soul Tear, and asks that you summon him into Tamriel occasionally. Not to fight, though he will, but just so he can taste the air of the living world again. It turns a monster into a tragic figure. You aren't just leaving with a scroll, you are leaving with a promise to an undead dragon who just wants a vacation. Stepping back through the portal, the purple haze of the Soul Cairn fades, replaced by the cool, damp air of Valerica's laboratory. The silence of the castle feels heavy. After the constant thunder, we have the Scroll of Blood, we have the Scroll of Sun, we have Serana. But the prophecy is a tripod. It needs 3 legs to stand. We are still missing one, the Scroll of Dragon. And Dexion, in his blindness, mentioned that the final scroll is likely linked to the very nature of the Dragonborn. This means we have to dive back into the base game's main questline mechanics. We need to find the location of the final scroll, which often involves dealing with the College of Winterhold or exploring the ancient Dwemer city of Blackreach. But for the purpose of our survival guide, let's assume you are a resourceful adventurer who has already secured the Dragon Scroll, or knows exactly which Dwemer Centurion to smash to get it. The board is set. We have the information. Now we need to understand what it says. As we step away from the shimmering barrier of the boneyard and prepare to leave the Soul Cairn, we need to pause. We have the Scroll of Blood, yes, but we also have a heavy burden of knowledge. The frantic dash to kill the Keepers in the previous leg of our journey was pure adrenaline. Now, in the quiet aftermath of the battle, we must unpack the tragedy of the family we've stepped into and the cursed dragon who guards them. Before we exit this purple hellscape, let's revisit the conversation with Valerica. It is one of the most important dialogue trees in the entire expansion because it deconstructs the villain's motivation with brutal logic. Valerica, standing there in her ancient vampire armour, explains why she fled. It wasn't just fear of Harkon's abuse, it was fear of his stupidity. Harkon wants to blot out the sun to allow vampires to rule openly. Valerica points out the ecological argument. If vampires rule openly and the sun is gone, the mortal, population, their food source, will dwindle. Crops will die, mortals will die, and eventually the vampires will turn on each other in a frenzy of starvation. Harkon isn't planning a kingdom, he's planning a mass suicide pact. Valerica is the pragmatic evil to Harkon's chaotic evil. She wants to survive forever in the shadows. He wants to burn out in a blaze of glory. This distinction makes the Volkihar conflict feel grounded in a twisted sort of politics. But the true emotional weight of this section lies with Durnehviir. As we attempt to leave the boneyard, the dragon we just defeated reforms. He doesn't attack. He lands on a perch, his rotting wings folded, and hails the Dragonborn as Cunarin, or Vanquisher in the dragon tongue. This interaction is startling because up until now dragons have been engines of destruction, or arrogant gods like Alduin. Durnehviir is tired. He is polite. He speaks with a formal archaic dialect that suggests he hails from a time, even before the Dragon War. We learn his backstory, that paints the Ideal Masters in a terrifying light. Durnehviir sought necromancy to gain an edge over his fellow dragons in the chaotic battles of the Merethic era. The Ideal Masters promised him the power to raise armies of undead, but the fine print was deadly. They bound him to the Soul Cairn to guard Valerica. His physical body has become so attuned to the cairn that he literally cannot exist in Tamriel for long periods without disintegrating. He is an immortal prisoner, duped by entities far older and stranger than himself. He asks us for a favour. It's not a fetch quest for a sword or a ring. He wants to fly. He teaches us the first word of a unique shout, Soul Tear. This shout is devastating. When fully unlocked, which requires 3 separate summons of Durnehviir in Tamriel, it does 3 things simultaneously. It deals massive damage, it soul traps the target, and if the target dies, it automatically reanimates them as a zombie fighting for you. It is the ultimate necromancer's tool. The visual effect is a ripping of the soul, a violet tear in reality that hits the enemy with the force of a freight train. But the real mechanic Durnehviir introduces is the summon Durnehviir shout. This is distinct from Soul Tear. When you shout his name to the skies of Skyrim, he breaks the barrier of oblivion to fight for you. Mechanically, this is a game changer. You essentially get a dragon companion. He flies overhead, raining down frost breath and drain vitality shouts on bandits, giants, or enemy dragons. He also summons his own army of bonemen, meaning that with one shout you're fielding a small squad of undead. However, there is a catch, a reality check for the player. Summoning Durnehviir requires a massive amount of open space. If you try to call him in a dense forest or a narrow city street, the shout will fail, and you'll just be yelling at the clouds. You need a flat plain or a mountain peak. When he does arrive, the sky momentarily darkens, and he emerges from a portal of purple energy. It is one of the most cinematic abilities in the Dragonborn's arsenal. The first 3 times you summon him in Tamriel are crucial. He doesn't just fight, he lands after the battle to teach you the remaining words of the Soul Tear shout. It's a mentor-student relationship. He calls you Thuri, my overlord. It's a subversion of the typical dragon dynamic. He isn't serving you out of fear, but out of gratitude. You are his vacation ticket. Every moment he spends in the fresh air of Skyrim is a respite from the eternal dust of the Soul Cairn. Once we have learned his words and bid farewell to Valerica, who stubbornly refuses to leave until Harkon is dead, we make our way back to the portal. The transition back to the laboratory in Castle Volkihar is jarring. The colour returns to the world. The air smells of sea salt and stone instead of ozone and ash. We now have 2 of the 3 Elder Scrolls needed to decipher the prophecy, the Sun and the Blood. The third, the Dragon Scroll, is likely already in your possession if you have progressed the main quest line, found in the Tower of Mzark within Blackreach. If not, you have a detour ahead of you involving a crazy old scholar named Septimus Cygnus and a lot of Falmer. Assuming we have all 3, we return to the Ancestor Glade, or Dexion if we haven't blinded him yet, though usually by this point he's out of commission. Since Dexion is blind, the Dragonborn must perform the reading. This brings us to the reading of the Elder Scrolls. It is a sequence that fans love to dissect. We stand in the centre of the glade, or the Time Wound depending on how you sequence the quests, surrounded by moths. We open the scrolls in a specific order: Sun, Blood, Dragon. The vision is fragmented. We see a map of Skyrim. We see a location in the Forgotten Vale of the Druidak Mountains. We see the symbol of Auriel, the elven version of Akatosh, and we see a weapon, Auriel's bow. The prophecy reveals that the key to the tyranny of the sun is not just blood, but this specific bow. Harkon needs it to launch a blood-cursed arrow into the sun, but the bow is hidden in Darkfall Cave, a place so obscure that even the most seasoned adventurers avoid it. This revelation sets the stage for the final act of the DLC. We are done with the politics of the court. We are done with the plains of oblivion. Now, we're going on a classic dungeon delve. As we prepare to leave for Darkfall Cave, Serana offers a moment of reflection. She's quiet, processing the fact that her mother is alive but imprisoned, and her father is actively trying to destroy the world. She asks the Dragonborn if they are ready. It's a subtle, "Are you sure you want to do this?" moment. The relationship between the player and Serana has shifted from escort mission to partners. She trusts you. Before we depart, let's take a quick inventory. We have the exploding bolts from Serene. Hopefully you stocked up. We have the summon Durnehviir shout. Don't forget to unlock the words with Dragon Souls. We have a follower who is arguably the most powerful mage in the game, and we have a destination that promises to be pitch black. Darkfall Cave is not just a name, it's a warning. The next leg of our journey will take us into the deepest, darkest hole in Skyrim. It is a place where torches are mandatory, and where the Falmer have evolved into something even worse than what we've seen before. So, sharpen your blades and cast your mage-light spells. We are leaving the open skies for the crushing weight of the earth. The bow of a god awaits, but the path to it is paved with spiders and blindness. The road to Darkfall Cave is a long, winding trek through the Druidak Mountains in the far northwest of Skyrim. It is a region of jagged stone and aggressive forsworn, where the very landscape feels hostile. You eventually find yourself near the orc stronghold of Morkazga, but instead of trading or brawling, you are looking for a small, unassuming wooden bridge leading into a crack in the mountain. Entering Darkfall Cave feels deceptively simple at first. The initial chamber looks like any other cave in the Reach, damp, grey, and lit by the occasional glowing mushroom. There is a rickety wooden suspension bridge stretching across a subterranean chasm. It creaks, it sways, and, in true cinematic fashion, just as you are halfway across, the ropes snap. This is a scripted event that you cannot avoid, no matter how high your sneak skill is or how light your armour. The Dragonborn and Serana plummet into the abyss. The screen goes black, the sound of rushing water fills your ears, and you are swept away by an underground river. It is a harsh transition from the calculated exploration of the previous sections to a chaotic struggle for survival. You are no longer the hunter, you are Flotsam. When you wash up on the shores of a subterranean lake, the first thing you notice is the darkness. Darkfall Cave lives up to its name. It is pitch black. Unless you are a Khajiit with night eye or a vampire with hunter's sight, you are effectively blind. This is one of the few areas in the game where a torch or the candlelight spell isn't just a role-playing prop. It is a necessity. The darkness here is oppressive, a physical weight that presses against your screen. As you stumble through the gloom, holding your torch high, you begin to hear the chittering. Frostbite spiders are a staple of Skyrim, usually easily dispatched with a few swings. But in the claustrophobic tunnels of Darkfall they are terrifying. Giant frostbite spiders drop from the ceiling without warning. The sound design is particularly cruel here. The scuttling of legs on stone echoes, making it impossible to pinpoint where the attack is coming from until red dots appear on your compass. You're fighting in a panic, swinging wildly at shadows while poison spit hisses through the air. There is a campsite near the water's edge, left by an unfortunate Breton adventurer named Brittany. His journal reveals the tragic backstory of this place. He was looking for the hidden chantry of Auriel, but found only spiders and trolls. It's a grim reminder that not everyone has plot armour. Pushing deeper, we encounter trolls. In the dark, their regeneration is even more threatening because you can't always see their health bars clearly. You have to listen for their heavy breathing and the wet slap of their feet on the wet stone. It is a gauntlet of sensory deprivation. Then, the atmosphere shifts. The raw, natural cave gives way to structures. You see white stone pillars, elegant and untouched by the grime of the cave. You see a pavilion that glows with a soft, ethereal light, and standing there is a figure that stops you in your tracks. He is tall, with skin the colour of pale marble, and armour that gleams like captured starlight. He is not a Falmer, he is not an Altmer, he is a Snow Elf. A living, breathing, uncorrupted Snow Elf. This is Knight Paladin Gelebor. Meeting him fundamentally changes our understanding of Skyrim's history. Up until this moment, the game has told us repeatedly that the Snow Elves were extinct, betrayed by the Dwemer and twisted into the blind, monstrous Falmer. Yet here stands Gelebor, articulate and noble, guarding a shrine that has been forgotten for thousands of years. He is the last of his kind, or at least the last one we know of. Gelebor's existence drops a massive lore bomb. He explains that while the majority of his people sought refuge with the Dwemer and were poisoned by the glowing mushrooms of Blackreach, a small sect remained here, in the chantry of Auriel, isolated from the betrayal. They remained pure. But time and the relentless assaults of their betrayed brethren, the Falmer, have whittled them down to just him. He is the sole guardian of the Way Shrines, a pilgrimage path that initiates once walked to achieve enlightenment and commune with Auriel, the elven aspect of Akatosh. He holds the key to the bow we seek, but he won't just hand it over. He needs us to kill his brother, Vurther. Gelebor mentions that the betrayed, the Falmer, have been becoming more organised, more intelligent. He suspects Vurther, the arch-curate, has been corrupted. But the obscure tidbit lies in the location itself. Darkfall Cave was actually a dungeon in the Elder Scrolls, Arena, the very first game in the series. In that game, it was the location of the Staff of Chaos. By reusing this specific cave, Bethesda is making a deep-cut callback, suggesting that this location has always been a nexus of cosmic importance, a place where reality is thin and artifacts of godlike power are hidden. Gelebor gives us the Initiate's ewer, a ceramic pitcher that looks heavy and fragile. Our mission is to traverse the chantry, finding 5 way shrines to fill the ewer with water. Once filled, the water will unlock the inner sanctum where Vertha and the bow waits. It sounds like a fetch quest, but the context transforms it. We are walking a holy path that hasn't been trodden in eras. Gelebor opens the first portal for us, a magical gateway that looks like a wall of shimmering water. Stepping through it is seamless, transporting us from the dark, spider-infested cave to the next leg of the journey. However, we aren't out of the dark yet. The portal takes us to a different section of Darkfall Passage. Here the Falmer presence is overwhelming. We aren't fighting mindless animals anymore, we are fighting a civilization. The Falmer here have built bridges, huts and fences. They use Charus, giant venomous insects, as cattle and war dogs. The Falmer intelligence question. Gelebor hopes that the Falmer might one day be cured, or at least civilize again. He sees a spark of their old souls in them. But as you fight through their camps, seeing the grisly totems made of human skulls and the torture racks, the community is divided. Are the Falmer truly a betrayed people, deserving of pity, capable of redemption? Or have they devolved so far into cruelty that they are irredeemable monsters? The game forces you to confront this as you slaughter them by the dozens to protect a Snow Elf who still pities them. The combat in Darkfall Passage is intense. The Falmer warmongers wield heavy armour and poisoned weapons. The Chorus Reapers are tanky and can paralyse you, and it's still dark. The glowing bioluminescence of the Falmer architecture provides eerie, beautiful lighting, but it also hides traps. Tripwires that release spiked walls, pressure plates that trigger poison darts. The Falmer have turned this cave into a kill box. One of the most memorable sequences in this section is the water slide. To progress, you eventually find another underground river. There is no bridge this time, you have to jump in. The current grabs you, hurling you down a series of waterfalls and rapids. It's a roller coaster ride in the dark. You are battered against rocks, swept through caverns filled with glowing gleam blossoms, and finally deposited in a calm pool. When you surface, the air is different. It's fresh. You see light, actual natural light, filtering in from somewhere ahead. You climb out of the water and walk through a narrow canyon. The stone walls rise high on either side, framing a view that makes every player stop and take a screenshot. You have reached the Forgotten Vale. This isn't a cave anymore. It is a massive hidden valley nestled deep within the mountains, completely cut off from the rest of Skyrim. It has its own ecosystem, its own weather and its own sky. The sun is shining here, but it feels distant, filtered through a magical haze. The flora is unique. Glowing flowers, strange mosses, and ancient trees that look like they belong in a fairy tale. As you step into the vale, the map opens up. It is huge. You can see waterfalls cascading down from impossible heights. You can see frozen lakes, and in the distance you can see the spires of the chantry, gleaming white against the snow. The transition from the claustrophobic horror of Darkfall Cave to the majestic openness of the Forgotten Vale is one of the best pacing decisions in the game. You feel like you've truly discovered a lost world. It's Skyrim's version of Shangri-La if Shangri-La was infested with angry elves and invisible dragons. Here, we find the first of the way shrines we need to activate. It stands on a small island in the river, attended by a ghostly prelate, a spirit of a Snow Elf priest who has been tending the shrine for thousands of years, unaware that his civilization is dead. He speaks to you as an initiate, asking if you are prepared to make the pilgrimage. It is a haunting interaction. You fill your ewer with the first measure of holy water, but the tranquility is deceptive. The Forgotten Vale is beautiful, yes, but it is also the home of the Falmer's surface raids. We aren't safe here. We're just in a bigger, prettier arena. As we look out over the frozen expanse, we spot 2 dragons taking flight from a frozen lake. These aren't just any dragons. These are the twin dragons, Voslorum and Naslorum. They have the ability to dive into the frozen water and burst out through the ice to attack you. This is the challenge of the Vale. It invites you to explore, to marvel at the saber cats that glow with neon stripes, the Vale saber cats, and the deer that look like patrons of the hunt, but it punishes you for dropping your guard. We have survived the dark, we have met the last Snow Elf, we have entered the hidden valley. Now, the real pilgrimage begins. We have to cross this massive landscape, find the remaining shrines, and confront the brother who holds the bow. And judging by the ominous castle looming at the far end of the valley, Vurtha is not going to be as welcoming as Gelebor. Stepping fully into the Forgotten Vale, the sheer scale of the place hits you like a blast of Arctic wind. It is one of the largest and most vertical exterior cells Bethesda ever designed, a sprawling basin of frozen waterfalls and impossibly high peaks. But as your eyes adjust to the blinding white snow and the strange alien bioluminescence of the flora, you realise something unsettling. You're being watched. The Vale isn't empty. It is a thriving ecosystem, but the apex predators here aren't the saber cats or the trolls. It is the Falmer. And this is where the narrative shifts from survival horror in the dark to witnessing a twisted civilization. As we traverse the frozen lake that dominates the centre of the valley, the ice beneath our boots cracks ominously. We are heading toward the word wall in the distance, because of course the Dragonborn can't resist a new shout, but the water explodes. 2 dragons, Voslarum and Naslarum, burst from the freezing depths. Here is an in-game fact that catches even veteran players off guard. These dragons are unique because they can dive. Unlike the standard dragons that circle in the air or land on rooftops, these 2 treat the frozen lake like a swimming pool. They submerge, disappear from your compass, and then erupt through the ice directly beneath you. It's a terrifying mechanic that forces you to stay mobile. You aren't safe on the ground, and you certainly aren't safe in the water. It's a brilliant piece of environmental combat design that turns the solid ground into a trap. After dealing with the aquatic dragons, likely by shouting Dragonrend and hoping they land on something solid enough to not slide away, we push deeper into the Vale. This leads us to the Glacial Crevice. If Darkfall Cave was a test of your ability to fight in the dark, the Glacial Crevice is a test of your vertigo. It is a massive fissure in the earth, a winding canyon of ice and stone packed with Falmer architecture. And this is where the true horror of the Falmer reveals itself. They haven't just dug holes, they have built a city. We see suspension bridges made of Chorus chitin spanning dizzying heights. We see huts constructed from hardened resin and bone. We see complex pulley systems and defensive fortifications. It defies the common perception of the Falmer as mindless feral ghouls. These creatures are engineers, they are organised, they have a culture, albeit one built entirely on suffering and poison. Here is a fan theory, the soul of the Falmer question. Mechanically, in Skyrim, Falmer souls are captured in white soul gems, the same category used for animals and lesser creatures. In contrast, playable races, men, mer, beastfolk, require black soul gems. This categorization implies that, metaphysically, the Falmer have devolved to the level of animals. However, Gelebor speaks of them as the betrayed, suggesting they are still elves deep down. The debate rages on: is the game mechanic a mistake? Or is it a lore-accurate confirmation that the Falmer have lost their black soul humanity entirely? Some fans argue that because they have language, craft and magic, they should yield black souls, and the fact that they don't is proof of how utterly the Dwemer toxin destroyed their spiritual essence. It's a haunting thought as you fill a common soul gem with the spirit of a Falmer Shadowmaster who just cast a complex lightning spell at you. Navigating the Glacial Crevice requires finding the remaining way shrines. This means fighting through waves of Falmer warmongers. These are the elite. They wear heavy, hardened armour that looks like the carapace of a giant insect. They wield weapons honed to a razor edge, and they are everywhere. The verticality of the crevice means you're constantly being shot at from above or below. You have to check your corners, watch the ledges, and listen for the distinct hiss of a Chorus Reaper. Speaking of Chorus, the Forgotten Vale introduces us to the Chorus Hunter. Up until this DLC, we only saw the crawling, centipede-like Chorus. Here, we witness their metamorphosis. We find massive, pulsating cocoons hanging from the cliffs. If you get too close, they burst open, and a winged, wasp-like monstrosity flies out. It's a moment of pure body horror. It implies that the Falmer have been breeding these things not just as dogs, but as airborne mounts or bombers. Amidst this violence, there is a quieter, sadder story to be found. Scattered throughout the Vale are 4 volumes of an unknown book, written in the Falmer language. If you bring these to Urag Groshub at the College of Winterhold, he can translate them. The translated texts are the diaries of a snow elf named Myrtil Angoth and others. They don't speak of the Falmer as monsters, but as a tragic inevitability. One volume details the Fair of the Wine, a joyous festival of the ancient snow elves. Another speaks of the Hour of the Yule, light, likely a religious ceremony. These books are the only written record we have of snow elf culture from a snow elf perspective, untouched by imperial revisionism. They paint a picture of a gentle, artistic people who loved the light, making their current existence in the dark all the more heartbreaking. Finding these books feels like archaeology. You're saving the memory of a dead race while fighting the monsters they became. As we climb higher, leaving the glacial crevice for the upper reaches of the Vale, we encounter the Frost Giants. These are hidden mini-bosses, massive, lumbering beasts that hold paragons. There are 5 paragons: amethyst, diamond, emerald, ruby, and sapphire. These gems are keys. If you find the paragon platform, a small nondescript archway overlooking the waterfall, you can insert a paragon to open a portal to a secret treasure room. It's a hidden mechanic that rewards exploration over combat. The rewards range from rare enchanted gear to immense piles of gold, but the real reward is the view. Stepping through a paragon portal often puts you on a secluded ledge high above the cloud layer, where for a moment the screaming of the Falmer fades away, and you can just watch the Aurora Borealis dance over the mountains. But the peace is fleeting. We have to push on. We need to fill the Initiate's Ewer at the final way shrine. The path leads us to the Inner Sanctum. It is a massive fortress carved directly into the mountain, the seat of the Arch-Curate Vurtha. The architecture here is breathtaking. Pristine white stone that gleams in the sun. It stands in stark contrast to the organic, chitinous filth of the farmer huts we just fought through. It represents the order that Gelibor is trying to preserve. However, the sanctum is guarded, not by Falmer, but by the Frozen. As we approach the massive doors, we see statues of Snow Elves and Falmer frozen in mid-action. They look like ice sculptures, but as you walk past, the ice cracks. They burst out, alive and angry. These are the thralls of Vurtha preserved by his magic to serve as eternal guards. Fighting them is disorienting because they look like the ancient elves we saw in the vision, yet they attack with the ferocity of the undead. Reaching the doors of the inner sanctum, we pour the water from the ewer into the basin. The water flows through channels carved into the floor, a glowing stream of liquid light. The heavy stone doors grind open. The air inside the sanctum is stale, smelling of old magic and something metallic, like blood. The hallway is lined with more frozen statues. You know they are going to wake up. It's a classic horror trope. Walking down a corridor of mannequins waiting for one to move, we are entering the heart of the corruption. We have seen the Falmer in their caves, we have seen them in their valley, and now we are seeing what controls them. Gelibor believes his brother has been corrupted by the Falmer, perhaps tortured into submission. But the sheer number of Falmer guarding this place, standing side by side with the frozen Snow Elves, suggests something far more sinister. They aren't holding Vurtha prisoner, they are his army. As we step into the main chamber of the sanctum, the objective updates. Locate Arch-Curate Vurtha. The music swells, a tragic choral piece that underscores the finality of what we're about to do. We aren't just here for a bow. We're here to end a family feud that has lasted for 4,000 years. The Falmer horrors of the Vale, the Shorus cocoons, the chitin bridges, the dark crevasses, were just the perimeter defense. The true monster is waiting on the balcony, staring at the sun he hates so much. And unlike the Falmer, he has eyes. He can see exactly who is coming to kill him. So, check your potions, make sure your weapons are charged. The trek through the Forgotten Vale has been a marathon of environmental hazards and tragic lore, but the sprint to the finish line starts now. We're about to meet the author of the prophecy. The heavy doors of the inner sanctum groan shut behind us, sealing out the biting wind of the Forgotten Vale. The silence here is heavy, the kind that feels like it has been gathering dust for thousands of years. We are now in the Chapel of Auriel, the holy seat of the Snow Elf Empire before it fell into darkness. The architecture is breathtaking, soaring arches of white stone that seem to defy gravity, bathed in a soft ethereal light that has no obvious source. It is pristine, a stark contrast to the grime and chitin of the farmer hives we just crawled through. At the far end of the chamber, sitting on a throne that overlooks a massive balcony, is Arch-Curate Vurtha. He doesn't rise to greet us. He doesn't panic. He simply watches. As we approach, the distance feels wrong. The room is too long, the silence too absolute. Then Vurther speaks. His voice is cold, dripping with arrogance and a strange, frantic energy. He questions why we are here, why we have disturbed his solitude. When Serana speaks up, mentioning the prophecy and the bow, Vurther laughs. It isn't a joyful sound, it's the sound of glass breaking. He doesn't come down to fight us, not yet. Instead, he activates the defences of the chapel. This triggers one of the most intense wave-based combat encounters in the Dawnguard DLC. The statues lining the walls, the frozen Falmer and Chorus we passed earlier, begin to crack. The ice shatters, and they burst forth, hissing and screeching. These aren't just standard enemies. They are ancient Falmer, wearing the heavy, hardened armour of their ancestors, wielding weapons that haven't been seen in Tamriel since the Merethic era. Fighting them in the sanctity of the chapel feels sacrilegious. You are dodging poisonous spit and heavy maces on polished marble floors. The acoustics of the room amplify every clash of steel, every spell impact. Wave after wave they come. First, the Chorus, skittering fast and low, then the warriors, hulking. Brutes that try to corner you against the pews. Finally the spellcasters, flinging frost magic that slows your movement and drains your stamina. It is an endurance test. You have to manage your resources, keep Serana on her feet, she tends to get overwhelmed here, and keep an eye on Vurther, who occasionally throws a spell down from his perch just to be annoying. When the last of his frozen thralls lies dead, melting into puddles on the pristine floor, Vurther loses his patience. He stands up, raising his hands to the ceiling. With a scream of rage, he unleashes a massive burst of magic that destabilizes the entire structure. The ceiling begins to crumble. Chunks of masonry the size of carriages crash down around you. Sunlight, pure, unfiltered sunlight, streams through the holes in the roof. The sunlight burns him. Vurther recoils, his skin smoking, shielding his face. Serana sees it immediately. "He's a vampire!" she shouts. It's the plot twist that recontextualizes this entire DLC. The Archcurate of Auriel, the guardian of the sun god's temple, is a creature of the night. He wasn't corrupted by the Falmer, he was infected by an initiate centuries ago. This revelation stops the combat for a moment of pure exposition. Vurther, realizing his secret is out, flees to the balcony. We follow him out into the open air. The view from here is spectacular, the entire Forgotten Vale stretched out below us, the waterfalls frozen in time, the sky a canvas of aurora and clouds. But Vurther isn't looking at the view, he is looking at the sun. He explains his motivation, and it is petty, tragic, and terrifying all at once. After he was turned, he prayed to Auriel for a cure. He begged his god to save him. But Auriel, a deity of light and purity, turned his back on the abomination his priest had become. Vurther felt abandoned. His love turned to a hatred so profound it spanned eras. He decided that if Auriel wouldn't look at him, he would blind Auriel. He crafted the prophecy of the tyranny of the sun. He wrote the Elder Scrolls prediction himself, or manipulated events until the scroll reflected his desire. He needed the blood of a daughter of Coldharbour to corrupt Auriel's own weapon, the bow, to blot out the sun. It wasn't about vampire supremacy, it was about revenge. He wanted to sever the connection between the sun god and the world so Auriel would lose his influence. This leads to a fascinating community debate. Did Vurther create the prophecy, or did he just discover a loophole in the metaphysics of the Elder Scrolls? Some lore scholars argue that because Elder Scrolls record all possible futures, Vurther's intense desire and his actions essentially wrote this possibility into existence. He forced the universe to acknowledge his tantrum. Others argue he simply found an existing prophecy and moulded his life to fulfill it. Regardless, he is the architect of the entire conflict. Harkon is just a pawn, Serana is just a battery, Vurther is the player. The final boss fight on the balcony is cinematic. Vurther is a powerful spell sword. He uses a unique elven mace and powerful vampiric drain spells. He summons an ancient frost Atronak to tank for him. But the real danger is the environment. The balcony has no railings. A well-placed Fusrodar can send Vurther flying off the edge, usually. However, the game developers anticipated this. Vurther is often immune to being ragdolled off the ledge until his health is critical, or he simply teleports back up. You have to fight him the hard way. Mechanically, he is a mirror of what the Dragonborn could become, a vampire who retained his holy armor and status. He is fast, he hits hard, and he heals himself. But against the combined might of the Dragonborn Serana, and perhaps a summoned Durnehviir circling overhead, if you have the space, he falls. When his health reaches 0, Vurtha doesn't just die. He has a final moment of spite. He curses Auriel, one last time before dissolving into ash. Silence returns to the balcony. The wind howls. The threat is gone. Moments later, a wayshrine portal opens on the balcony. Knight Paladin Gelebor steps through. He looks at the pile of ash that was his brother. His reaction is understated but heartbreaking. He suspected Vurtha was corrupted, but he didn't know the extent of it. He mourns not just his brother, but the final death of the Snow Elf priesthood. He is truly the last one now. Gelebor walks to the shrine at the edge of the balcony. Resting there, glowing with a divine golden light, is Auriel's bow. He picks it up and offers it to us. "You have done a great service," he says. "Take it. It was made to channel the power of the sun. Perhaps you can use it to protect it." Acquiring Auriel's bow is a major milestone. This isn't just a high-damage bow, it is an artifact of the gods. It has appeared in almost every main Elder Scrolls game: Arena, Darkfall, Morrowind, Oblivion, in the Knights of the Nine expansion, and now Skyrim. It is one of the most consistent legendary items in the lore. Gelebor explains its unique mechanics. The bow draws power from the sun. It shoots faster than any other bow in the game, but its true power lies in the arrows. He grants us a quiver of sun-hallowed elven arrows. When fired from Auriel's bow at the sun, these arrows cause a sunburst effect. Beams of searing light rain down from the sky, striking all enemies in the area. It's like calling in an orbital laser strike. It is devastating against undead, particularly vampires. But there is a darker option. We possess the blood of a daughter of Coldharbour. If we ask Serana to taint a set of elven arrows with her blood, we get blood-cursed elven arrows. Firing a blood-cursed arrow at the sun triggers the Tyranny of the Sun event. The sun turns black. The sky turns a bruised purple. For one day the sun does not burn vampires. You effectively turn off the daylight mechanic. It is the ultimate power trip for a vampire player. The world plunges into an eclipse, and you can walk freely, regenerating stats and terrorizing towns at noon. This mechanic is the payoff for the entire DLC. You hold the switch for the day/night cycle in your hands. The bow itself is said to be the very weapon Auriel used to shoot the heart of Lorcan across Tamriel, creating Red Mountain. By holding it, you are holding the tool that shaped the geography of Morrowind. The bow's enchantment never runs out in the lore, but in-game, you do have to recharge it with soul gems, a necessary gameplay balance that feels a bit like putting AA batteries in Excalibur. With the bow in hand, the mission in the Forgotten Vale is complete. We have the weapon Harkon fears or desires. We have the means to stop the prophecy or fulfill it. Serana approaches us. The reality of what her father is planning, and what Vurtha revealed, has hardened her resolve. She knows there is no talking Harkon down. He is obsessed. And now that we have the bow, he will come for us with everything he has. "We need to finish this," she says. "We need to go back to the castle, but we can't do it alone." She's right. Walking into Castle Volkihar with just the two of us would be suicide. We need an army. If you are with the Dawnguard, it is time to rally the troops at the fort. If you are a vampire, it is time to assert your dominance and challenge Harkon for the throne. The section ends as we stand on the balcony, the bow humming with solar energy in our hands. The Forgotten Vale stretches out below, beautiful and deadly, but our eyes are turned south, toward the coast, toward the castle. We have climbed the mountain. We have killed the corrupt priest. We have stolen the power of the sun god. Now, we just have to survive the family reunion. Leaving the pristine, frozen silence of the Forgotten Vale feels like waking up from a dream. We have stood on the balcony of a god, watched a vampire priest dissolve into ash, and now hold the literal power of the sun in our inventory. Auriel's bow hums with a faint golden energy, a constant reminder that the stakes have shifted. We are no longer investigating rumours or hunting singular monsters. We are carrying a weapon of mass destruction. The fast travel back to Skyrim proper, specifically to the Rift, brings a stark change in palette. The white snow and ethereal glimmers of the Vale are replaced by the golden-brown hues of the fall forest and the grey stone of the canyon. But as we approach Fort Dawnguard, the atmosphere is different. It's no longer the quiet ruin we first walked into. It sounds like a factory. If you have chosen the path of the Dawnguard, this is the moment the game rewards you for all those tedious recruitment quests. The canyon is bustling. You hear the rhythmic clang, clang, clang of the forge as Gunmar repairs armour. You hear the sharp thwack of crossbows being tested on the range. You hear the growls of the armoured trolls pacing in their pen, eager for violence. The fort has transformed from a dusty relic into a fully operational forward operating base. Walking into the main hall, the sense of urgency is palpable. Isran is usually pacing near the map table or barking orders from the balcony. When he sees the Dragonborn, and more importantly the bow, the change in his demeanour is immediate. He doesn't smile, Isran doesn't do smiles, but he nods. It's a nod of grim satisfaction. The "I told you so" energy is strong, but it's channeled into action. He realises that the time for skirmishes is over. Harkon knows we have the bow. If we don't strike now, he will come for us, and he won't just send a few vampires, he'll send the entire court. Isran calls for a gathering. This is a scripted in-game fact that marks the beginning of the end. He gathers every NPC you have recruited into the main rotunda. It's a who's who of vampire hunters. We see Soreen Gerard clutching her masterwork crossbow, looking nervous but determined. She's likely double-checking the explosive bolts one last time. We see Gunmar sharpening his axe, looking like he's about to chop wood, except the wood is vampire necks. We see Eggmare, the farm boy we met at the very beginning. He's no longer trembling. He's wearing full Dawnguard heavy armour, holding a crossbow with a steady hand. Seeing his progression from a terrified peasant to a soldier is one of the subtle storytelling triumphs of the DLC. And then there is Florentius Baenius. Florentius is the wild card of the Dawnguard. You recruit him from a Radiant quest later in the storyline, finding him in a dungeon called Runevald. He is an imperial priest of Arkay, but he's eccentric. He claims to speak directly to Arkay, the god of the cycle of life and death. Throughout the game, he will pause mid-sentence to listen to his god, often relaying oddly specific advice or complaints. Arkay says you should buy more restoration spells, or Arkay thinks you're doing a good job mostly. Lore scholars have long debated Florentius's mental state. In the Elder Scrolls universe, gods do interact with mortals, but usually through avatars or obscure signs, not chatty conversations in a crowded room. However, Florentius's spells are undeniably potent. He sells the highest level restoration magic in the game, including Stendarr's Aura and Vampire's Bane. The fact that he can channel such immense holy fire suggests that maybe, just maybe, Arkay is actually talking to him. Or perhaps he's a potent mage whose madness just happens to align with divine will. Either way, having a man who takes combat orders from the god of death is a comforting asset when you're about to fight the undead. Isran's speech is short, brutal, and effective. He acknowledges that most of the people in the room are outcasts, misfits, or refugees. He reminds them that the world ignores the threat in the dark, but they, the Dawnguard, do not. We are the only thing standing between the people of Skyrim and the everlasting night, he growls. It's a classic rallying cry. He orders everyone to gear up. The destination is Castle Volkihar. No stealth, no diplomacy. We are kicking the door down. This leads to the march on the castle. If you're playing as a vampire lord, this section plays out very differently. There is no speech. There is no rallying of troops. The rallying is internal. You return to the castle not as a conqueror, but as a challenger. The court is silent. The other vampires watch you with a mix of fear and hunger. They know you have the bow. They know Harkon wants it. The tension is thick enough to cut with a dagger. You aren't gathering an army. You're realizing that you are the army. You and Serana are about to stage a violent coup d'etat against the oldest monster in the room. But assuming we are with the Dawnguard, which offers the more chaotic and cinematic finale, we fast travel to the jetty near the castle. The scene upon arrival is chaotic. The Dawnguard doesn't just spawn inside, they actually fight their way across the bridge. This brings us to a significant fan theory, the useless ally. AI problem. Veterans of Skyrim know that NPC pathfinding on narrow bridges is optimistic at best. The bridge to Castle Volkihar is long, narrow, and lined with gargoyles. As the Dawnguard charges, trolls roaring, huskies barking, Soreen firing bolts, the gargoyles burst from their stone perches. It's supposed to be an epic clash. However, fans often joke and complain about how the Dawnguard NPCs tend to shove each other off the ledge, get stuck on rocks, or refuse to attack until they are hit. There is a prevalent theory that the armoured trolls are actually a liability in this specific fight because their hitboxes are so large they block the entire bridge, preventing the Dragonborn from getting into melee range. It turns the final assault into a traffic jam of angry Nords and shouting trolls. Players often have to shout unrelenting force just to clear a path through their own allies to get to the enemy. It's a moment where the game's ambition slightly outpaces its engine, but the sheer spectacle of seeing 10 NPCs charging a castle usually makes up for the clumsiness. We fight our way across the stone causeway. The gargoyles are tough, but against the combined firepower of the entire Dawnguard order, they crumble quickly. Explosive bolts light up the gloomy sky. Sunfire spells from Florentius burn through the stone skin of the beasts. It's a light show of destruction. Reaching the main gate, there is no knocking. Isran, wielding his warhammer, smashes the mechanisms, or simply waits for the load zone trigger. We breach the castle. The main hall of Castle Volkihar, once a place of tense political dinners and silent judgment, erupts into a war zone. This is the entry hall skirmish. The tables are overturned. The vampires, Vingalmo, Orthiolf, and the nameless fodder are waiting. This is where the game throws everything at you. Vampires are casting drain life in every direction. Mistwalkers are teleporting behind your archers. Deathhounds are gnawing on the armoured trolls. It is absolute bedlam. For the player, the priority is target selection. You can let the NPCs handle the fodder, but the named vampires, the lieutenants, are dangerous. Vingalmo, the Altmer politician, loves to use lightning magic that can disintegrate your allies. Orthiolf uses heavy armour and two-handed weapons. Taking them out feels like dismantling Harkon's cabinet one minister at a time. Amidst the chaos, Serana is a whirlwind of ice and necromancy. She is fighting her own family, her own history. She raises the fallen vampires to fight their former kin. It's a grim irony that fits her character perfectly. She isn't hesitating anymore. She's clearing the path to her father. As the battle rages in the Great Hall, Isran shouts for you to push forward. "We'll hold them here. You get to Harkon." It's the classic "I'll hold the line" trope. The Dawnguard, the trolls, and the dogs form a defensive perimeter, blocking the reinforcements from the lower levels. The path to the cathedral, Harkon's personal sanctum, is open. We pause for a moment before the final door. The sounds of battle, steel on steel, the roar of trolls, the screams of the undead, echo behind us. Ahead, there is only silence. This is the moment of no return. We have the bow. We have Serana. We have cleared the gauntlet. The transition from the noisy, crowded hall to the quiet corridor leading to the cathedral is jarring. It allows the player to reset, to heal, to check their inventory one last time. Do you have enough of arrows? Are your enchantments charged? Did you remember to drink a potion of fire resistance? Because whatever Isran and the others are fighting out there, it's nothing compared to what is waiting in the dark room ahead. Harkon isn't just a vampire lord. He's a descendant of Molag Bal's direct corruption. He has had thousands of years to prepare for this exact moment, and unlike the bridge gargoyles or the hall vampires, he won't be defeated by bad pathfinding. Serana stands by the door. She looks at you. "This is it," she says. "There's no going back. Are you ready?" It's the final check, the final breath before the plunge. We nod. We push the doors open. The cathedral awaits. The heavy double doors of the cathedral slam shut behind us, sealing the Dragonborn and Serana inside with the architect of this entire nightmare. The sounds of the battle raging in the main hall, the shouts of the Dawnguard, the roar of trolls, the crack of crossbows are instantly muffled, replaced by a silence so profound it feels like pressure in your ears. We're in the inner sanctum of Lord Harkon. The room is vast, dominated by a massive circular altar in the centre. At the far end stands a shrine to Molag Bal, the Daedric Prince of Domination. It is a gruesome effigy of stone and blood, a constant reminder of where the Volkihar power comes from, and standing before it, waiting for us with the patience of an immortal who believes he has already won, is Harkon. He doesn't attack immediately. In classic villain fashion, he wants to talk. He descends the steps of the shrine, his movements fluid and predatory. He looks at Serana first, his voice dripping with the disappointment that cuts deeper than any blade. He calls her a traitor, a disappointment, a failure. He doesn't see a daughter, he sees a broken tool. Then he turns to us. He demands the bow. "Give me the bow," he says, "and I will let you live to see the new world I create." It is a lie, of course, we know it. Serana knows it. Even the game interface knows it, offering us dialogue options that range from defiant refusal to weary acceptance of the inevitable. This conversation is the final narrative beat before the mechanics take over. It's a moment to appreciate the voice acting. Harkon's arrogance is palpable. He truly believes that a mortal with a fancy bow and a rebellious daughter are no match for a pure-blooded vampire lord in his own seat of power. When the talking is done, Harkon doesn't just draw a sword, he transforms. The air around him warps. Red lightning crackles. His body contorts, bones cracking and reshaping into the monstrous vampire lord form we saw back in Section 3, but this time he isn't showing off. He is trying to kill us. The boss fight with Lord Harkon is a multi-stage encounter that tests everything you have learned throughout the DLC. He doesn't fight like a normal enemy. He hovers, he teleports, he summons. First, the movement. Harkon constantly shifts around the room, dissolving into a swarm of bats and reappearing on the other side of the altar. This makes melee combat incredibly frustrating. You find yourself sprinting across the room, axe raised, only for him to vanish in a puff of mist just as you swing. For archers and mages, it's a game of whack-a-mole, trying to track his teleportation pattern while dodging the blood magic projectiles he flings at you. Here is what defines this fight. Harkon is immune to almost everything while he is in his mist form. When he feels threatened, or simply wants to reposition, he becomes invulnerable. You can shout at him, shoot him, burn him, it doesn't matter, you have to wait for him to materialize. It forces a rhythm to the combat that is distinct from the chaotic brawls of the rest of Skyrim. You have to be patient, you have to wait for your opening. As his health drops, Harkon escalates the fight. He summons gargoyles from the stone perches around the room. These aren't the weak ones from the bridge. These are boss-level variants that can stagger you with a single swipe. He also summons skeletons, bone men from the Soul Cairn, to harass you. The arena becomes crowded. You have to juggle clearing the ads while keeping track of the teleporting Vampire King, but the pivotal mechanic involves the shrine itself. Periodically, Harkon will retreat to the Molag Bal altar. He envelops himself in a spherical barrier of blood magic. While inside this shield, he regenerates health rapidly. If you try to hit the shield with normal weapons or spells, they bounce off. It looks impenetrable. This is where Auriel's bow becomes mandatory. The game gives you a subtle visual cue. Harkon glows with a reddish hue that contrasts with the golden light of the bow. You must equip Auriel's bow and use the sun-hallowed elven arrows we received from Gelebor. Firing a sun-blessed arrow at the blood shield causes a violent reaction. The holy solar energy reacts with the dark blood magic, shattering the barrier in an explosion of light. Harkon is stunned, falling to the ground, vulnerable. This mechanic, using the sun to break the blood, is the thematic climax of the entire story. It is light piercing the dark. It is Auriel smiting Molag Bal. There is a fascinating community debate surrounding Harkon's combat AI. Many players have noted that Harkon often ignores Serana during the fight to focus entirely on the Dragonborn. Lore enthusiasts argue this is because Harkon views the Dragonborn, the Vanquisher, as the only real threat, dismissing Serana as inconsequential. However, others point out that Serana's AI is programmed to use high-level destruction magic that actually hurts Harkon significantly. The debate centers on whether Harkon's arrogance blinds him to his daughter's power, or if he simply can't bring himself to kill her first, preserving her for the prophecy later. It adds a layer of tragic dysfunction to the combat. He ignores the daughter who is actively killing him. The fight drags on. Harkon's dialogue during the battle becomes more desperate. "The power of the night is mine to command," he screams, even as his health bar whittles down. "No! I am eternal." If you are a vampire lord yourself, this fight is a duel of monsters. You can transform and fight him claw to claw. There is a special kill move animation if you defeat him in melee as a vampire lord. You lift him up by the throat and drain his life force directly. It feels like the ultimate usurpation. You aren't just killing him, you're replacing him. But for most players, the end comes with an arrow or a blade. When Harkon's health finally reaches 0, he doesn't just flop over like a bandit. The death animation is unique to him. He stumbles back toward the altar, clutching his chest. He cries out in disbelief. No, no, no! He begins to dissolve. His body turns into a swarm of bats, but the bats disintegrate into red ash. He melts away until there is nothing left but a pile of dust and his royal armour on the floor. The silence returns to the cathedral. Serana stands over the pile of ash. She's breathing heavily. Her hands are empty of magic now. She stares at what remains of her father. "It's over," she says quietly. "He's gone." This moment is heavy. There is no cheering. Serana doesn't celebrate. She just looks tired. She acknowledges that it had to be done, that he was too far gone, but it's still her father. It is a somber victory. If you sided with the Dawnguard, Isran bursts into the room a moment later. He's covered in gore, his hammer dripping, looking like he just fought a war. Single-handedly, which, to be fair, he did. He sees the ash. He sees Serana. Isran's reaction here is the final piece of his character arc. Throughout the DLC, he's been paranoid, hateful of all vampires, and distrustful of Serana. But seeing the deed done, seeing Serana standing over her father's remains, he softens. He acknowledges her role. "You did well," he says. It's high praise coming from a man who usually communicates in grunts and threats. He admits that perhaps not all vampires are monsters, or at least this one isn't. It is a reconciliation that feels earned. We can loot Harkon's remains. We find Harkon's sword, a unique katana that absorbs health, magicka and stamina if wielded by a vampire. It's a powerful weapon, sleek and deadly, a fitting trophy. We also find his vampire royal armour, which provides massive magicka regeneration, perfect for a mage build. Here is a lore regarding the shrine in the room. The statue of Molag Bal is not just decoration. If you look closely at the base of the shrine, you can see runic inscriptions that mirror the ones found in the abandoned house in Markarth, where the Dragonborn first encounters Molag Bal. The reuse of these assets suggests a direct conduit. Harkon wasn't just worshipping, he was channeling. The blood that fills the basin of the shrine is likely the blood of the ancients, mentioned in the Radiant quests. By destroying him here, we have effectively severed a direct line of communication to a Daedric prince. We didn't just kill a vampire, we hung up the phone on a god. With Harkon dead, the immediate threat is gone. The tyranny of the sun is averted, unless you decide to cause it yourself later for fun. The court is leaderless. Isran turns to leave. The Dawnguard will be watching, he says to Serana, a warning but also a promise of truce. He invites the Dragonborn back to the fort. There's still work to be done. Vampires don't take a day off and neither do we. Serana, however, chooses to stay for a moment. She tells you she will meet you later. She needs time to process. She needs to be alone in the home that is now empty of the madness that destroyed her family. We walk out of the cathedral, back into the main hall. The fighting has stopped. The bodies of the Volkihar vampires litter the floor. The Dawnguard survivors are regrouping, tending to wounds, reloading crossbows. Walking out of the castle and onto the bridge, the air feels cleaner. The oppressive gloom that hangs over Castle Volkihar seems to lift slightly. The sun, the real sun, not the blackened one of the prophecy, is breaking through the clouds over the sea of ghosts. We have won. The prophecy is broken, the bow is ours, the vampire lord is dust. But as any Skyrim player knows, the end of a questline is never really the end. The world doesn't stop just because the big bad is dead. There are still dragons in the sky, there are still bandits on the roads, and, ironically, now that we have finished the DLC, the game world has changed in ways we might not expect. New enemies have been unlocked, new encounters will start spawning on the roads, and we still have a vampire companion who is dealing with centuries of trauma. So, holster your crossbow, sheathe your sword. We have one last leg of this journey. We need to talk about the aftermath. We need to talk about what happens when the credits don't roll, and you have to live in the world you just saved. The echoes of the final battle in the cathedral have faded. Lord Harkon is nothing more than a pile of red ash and a memory of arrogance, and the tyranny he sought to impose upon the sun has been averted. Or perhaps it has simply changed hands. Walking out of Castle Volkihar and back into the open air of Skyrim, there is a strange sense of quiet. The immediate urgency, the race for the scrolls, the hunt for the Moth Priest, the descent into the Soul Cairn, is gone. The narrative arc has closed its circle. But as any veteran of the Elder Scrolls knows, the world does not simply stop because the credits might have rolled in a different game. In Skyrim, the end of a questline is merely the beginning of the aftermath. Surviving the Dawnguard DLC isn't just about beating the final boss, it's about living in the world that the DLC has permanently altered. And the first thing you notice is that the vampires didn't get the memo that their king is dead. While the organised threat of the Volkihar clan is shattered, the Radiant AI system ensures that the roads remain dangerous. You will still encounter the Traveller, a vampire disguised as a hooded pilgrim wandering the roads. He doesn't attack immediately, he waits until you are close, perhaps hoping you'll mistake him for a quest giver, before revealing his red eyes and gargoyle summons. It's a lingering reminder that the shadows still have teeth. But the most significant change lies in your own inventory. You now possess Auriel's bow. Here is an in-game fact that fundamentally shifts the late-game experience. You can now do exactly what Harkon wanted to do, but on your own terms. If you possess the blood-cursed elven arrows crafted by Serana using her own blood, you can shoot the sun. The effect is immediate and spectacular. The sun blackens, a purple eclipse swallows the sky, and the day turns into a pseudo-night. For a Vampire Lord player, this is the ultimate reward. The sun no longer burns. Your stats regenerate. You can walk into Whiterun at high noon and terrorize the guards without sizzling. It transforms the open world into your personal playground. However, if you are playing as a Dawnguard member, using the bow feels almost blasphemous, a guilty pleasure. You shoot the sun just to see the cool visual effect, then quickly reload your save because the guilt of essentially validating the villain's plan is too much for a paladin roleplay. Speaking of Serana, her story doesn't end in the cathedral either. She remains as a follower, leaning against walls and complaining about the weather. Sun or snow, she's never happy. But there is a hidden path for her, one that requires careful navigation of her dialogue tree. You can cure her. This is a delicate process. If you were supportive, kind, and didn't treat her like a monster or a tool throughout the questline, you can gently suggest that she seek a cure for her vampirism. If you push too hard, she shuts down. But if you navigate it correctly, she leaves for a few days to visit Fallion in Morthal. When she returns, her eyes are no longer the glowing orange of a predator. They're a soft, natural green. She is mortal. She can be healed by restoration spells. She is free. This brings us to the most heated community debate in the entire history of Skyrim, the Serana marriage question. Serana is, by a significant margin, the most complex and developed follower in the game. Her dialogue is extensive, her backstory is tragic, and her interaction with the world is unique. Naturally, players fell in love with her, yet she is unromanceable. You cannot wear an amulet of Mara and propose. When asked, she politely declines, citing her traumatic past and her complicated relationship with temples. The community has spent over a decade debating why. Some argue it's a rush job by Bethesda, a cut-content tragedy. Others, the lore-focused fans, argue it is deliberate and poignant character choice. Serana is a survivor of Molag Bal's ritual, a ritual explicitly described in lore as horrifying and violating. The idea that she would want to rush into a marriage, especially in a temple of the divines, feels tone-deaf to her trauma. Her refusal is seen by many as a sign of her agency. She finally owns her life, and she doesn't want to bind it to anyone else, not even the Dragonborn. It is a debate that transcends gameplay mechanics and touches on how we interpret character autonomy in RPGs. Of course, that hasn't stopped modders from fixing it within days of the DLC's release, because the heart wants what it wants. But while we are dealing with emotional fallout, the game decides to throw a new physical threat at us. The Dawnguard DLC raises the level cap and introduces a new apex predator, the legendary dragon. These beasts are the true final bosses of Skyrim. They don't start spawning until the player reaches level 78, a grind that takes hundreds of hours. Here is a lore tidbit regarding their design. Legendary dragons have unique, compound eyes, similar to a fly or a bee. This alien feature distinguishes them from every other dragon variant. Lore-wise, this implies they possess a form of sight that transcends the normal spectrum, perhaps allowing them to see magical flows or timelines, fitting for creatures so ancient. They are often revered in dragon cult texts not just as warriors, but as seers. Fighting a legendary dragon is a humble check for a god-tier character. They have massive health pools and use the Drain Vitality shout, which ignores armor and magic resistance to sap your health, magicka, and stamina simultaneously. It's the same shout Durnehviir uses, and seeing it used against you in the wild is terrifying. A battle with a legendary dragon isn't a skirmish, it's a boss raid. It requires every potion, every shout, and every exploding bolt you have stockpiled. Back at Fort Dawnguard, the war settles into a routine. Isran Naui, bit more mellow for him, offers radiant quests to hunt down the remnants of the Volkihar court or investigate vampire lairs. Soreen continues to tinker with her crossbows, perhaps asking you to find one last schematic for an exploding dwarven bolt of chaos. Gunmar still wants you to tame bears. The loop continues. If you sided with the vampires, the castle becomes your court. You can upgrade it, repairing the path to the courtyard and fixing the broken furniture. You sit on Harkon's throne, the Master of the Night, but it's a lonely throne. The other vampires fear you, but they don't love you. And Serana, if she's still with you, watches you with a guarded expression, wondering if you will become her father in time. The Dawnguard DLC leaves a permanent mark on the province. You see it in the vigilance of Stendar wandering the roads, now often accompanied by Dawnguard patrols. You see it in the random vampire attacks on hold capitals, though thankfully Bethesda patched out. The vampires killing quest-critical NPCs in towns, sparing us the grief of losing Bellathor to a random bite. You see it in the sky, occasionally darkened by your own arrows. Ultimately, surviving the Dawnguard DLC is about acceptance. We accept that the world is darker than we thought. We accept that some monsters can be redeemed, and some heroes are just paranoid jerks with hammers. We accept that the best weapon in the game is a crossbow that goes boom. The journey from the hidden canyon of the Rift to the frozen peaks of the Forgotten Vale has been long. We have walked the plains of oblivion, negotiated with undead dragons, and witnessed the fall of an ancient Snow Elf house. We have gathered the artifacts, learned the shouts, and made our choices. The Dragonborn stands on the ramparts of Fort Dawnguard, looking out over the canyon. The sun is setting, a normal golden sunset, not a blood-cursed one. The air is cool, the sound of the waterfall is a steady, calming roar. We have survived. We have hunted, and we have kept the light burning for one more day. The vampires may still lurk in the dark, waiting for a moment of weakness, but they know we are watching. They know the sound of a crossbow bolt snapping into place, and they know that the night no longer belongs solely to them. And so, the crossbow is lowered, the strings slackened, and the heavy bolts are returned to the quiver. The fires in the great hearth of the fort have burned down to glowing embers, casting long soft shadows against the stone walls. The shouting of orders and the clang of the forge have faded into the quiet rhythm of the night watch. It is time to rest. You have walked miles across the frozen tundra, climbed the dizzying heights of the Vale, and stood firm against the darkness that sought to swallow the world. Your armour is heavy, your boots are worn, and the weight of the prophecy has finally been lifted from your shoulders. Take a moment to breathe. Listen to the wind, howling outside the thick stone walls, a sound that used to signal danger, but now just reminds you that you are safe inside, warm and protected. The world of Skyrim continues to turn. The moons, Massa and Secunda, drift slowly across the star-filled sky, watching over the land you have fought so hard to save. Let the tension in your muscles release. Unclench your jaw. Let your shoulders drop. The dragons are sleeping in their mountain peaks. The vampires have retreated deep into their caves. For tonight, the roads are quiet. For tonight, there are no more battles to fight, no more choices to make. The map is put away. The quest log is silent. Close your eyes and let the darkness be a comfort, not a threat. Let the soft hum of the night carry you away from the cold, away from the noise, and into the deep, dreamless sleep of a hero who has earned their rest. You have done enough. You are safe. Sweet dreams.